Aha. Hello.
Hello.
Greetings. Very clear signal. Welcome. And I got your talk. It's brilliant. So well done.
Yes, thank you.
We'll
It's okay.
come to the, the Delphic movement on the agenda.
Yes.
Yeah. Susan, hello.
Hello there, how are you?
I'm very well. You're in Hong Kong, right?
I am, yes.
Are you still under quarantine rules?
I am in the hotel, yes, vegging out here.
Right. Okay. You look like you're in a Taoist temple, so that's good.
In my mind.
Excellent. And Sharmila, you're joining us from India. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, good evening. This is Dr. Sharmila from India.
Right.
In fact, my camera is not working. I'm sorry for that.
Well, no problem. We can see a nice picture of you.
Yeah, that's me.
That's you. Okay. So great. To hearing from you a bit later. I'm going to send the agenda round in chat.
Yeah.
If I can technically do that. Shouldn't be too difficult. We've got 11 things to go, and I think we should get through them all right. Hang on, chat. There we go. And what I'll do is I'll call on different speakers when we come to that bit of the agenda that seems appropriate. I've got a sort of timetable worked out. Excellent. Right, can you see that? There's 11 points. Did you all get that?
Wunderbar. Und dann vielleicht nur noch etwas Wasser zu meinem hier in meine Tasse und damit herzlich.
Greetings, Christian. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, welcome. Berlin. Yeah. So I've just put the agenda in chat, and you'll see the Delphic movement thing is number 8. And we'll come to that in due course. And then, you can do your introduction and explanation and all that.
Well, you're doing fine. That's great.
And let me introduce Christian. Let me introduce Rosalba. You can probably see her picture from Italy.
Yes, thank you.
She is going to be talking about the arts, and she's very excited about the Delphic Games project. So, hopefully this will be the first of many encounters, for us all.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And I should confess, Christian's just appointed me head of the education wing of the Delphic movement. So I'm like the guy reaching out to schools, universities, colleges, and academia. And that's a huge job. I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you. I thank you, Thomas. Thank you. You are not aware about the range I'm dropping on your shoulder, and so I'm even more grateful.
I have what I call a Hercules complex. It's a Freudian term I've coined. 12 labors to do before breakfast, and bring them on. I mean, if we're going to save the world, we have to get up our game, right? If you don't have a Hercules complex, you shouldn't be on this Zoom call, really. But and one of our colleagues, actually, I don't know if you know this, Hercules gave his name to Monaco. For those of you that know Monaco in the south of France, it's named after Hercules, who was Hercules Monachos, the only one. We do have a representative for the World Intellectual Forum in Monaco. I don't know that she's joining us, sadly. It's her holiday. Well, why don't we just start with a few introductions whilst we're waiting for others before we actually formally start the agenda. Let's start with you, Sharmila, because you're new to us. Tell us more about you and what you do. Just, a little brief introduction. It's an honor to have you with us.
Who's that?
Dr. Sharmila Babu is joining us.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. I'm Dr. Sharmila from India, south part of India, Chennai. I have been invited by Mr. Murali from Singapore. And I'm an education counseling psychologist. I give training and counseling for school students and college students. And I'm basically from Bangalore. And I have been trained 12,000 students in India. I have trained 9,000 teachers trainer. I'm a coach. I'm an NLP trainer, natural healer. So with this all my talent, I encourage the students for studying more. And about this, Mr. Murali told me about this meeting. I was very interested to attend this meeting and wanted to know what is it happening about. And really glad to be part of this team. Thank you so much.
Greetings. Okay, welcome, Sharmila. That's excellent. So, Rosalba, quickly introduce yourself. Yeah.
Yes, I am Rosalba Nattero from Italy. I am the president of Ecospirituality Foundation. We follow this philosophy of eco-spirituality is founded by Giancarlo Barbadoro, late Giancarlo Barbadoro, and this is a philosophy inspired by nature, by Mother Earth, but linked to Mother Earth. This is the brief presentation.
And where are you speaking from? Which part of Italy are you in, Rosalba?
Torino, Turin, North Italy.
Torino.
Torino, yes.
Yeah, welcome. Susan, introduce yourself briefly.
Hi there. I'm a physician, integrative physician, an MD of 30 years experience based in Hong Kong, combining obviously indigenous and complementary philosophies into medicine. But my passion is the light, and it's well-being through access to light and consciousness. So I travel a lot and, conferences, and I write, and this is my passion. So I hope that was brief enough.
No, that was, and Susan was just now in Greece. She spoke to the Scientific and Medical Network, a brilliant talk. And she was visiting a place where Aristotle used to teach Alexander the Great. So I'm incredibly impressed by that. She's a
I gave a little talk there.
Yeah, no, that's a whole other talk, right? Murali, do introduce yourself. A very brief introduction at this stage, yeah.
Yes, good evening. Okay, good evening, can you hear?
Yeah, we can all hear you where we're waiting for your brief introduction. Yeah, welcome.
Okay, I am Murali from Singapore. I'm originally from India, South India, Tamil Nadu state. But I am settled in Singapore since August 1995. I'm basically a civil engineer. I'm working still now in the construction field as a safety, health, environment professional. Okay, I have one project to unite humanity with the amalgamation of science and spirituality. So this project, we are now working together to see whether it can be executed in South India as per your idea where it should be located. So we are now following it up on this. Hope some good news will come soon.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that's the first item on our agenda. It's called the Universal Peace Tower, and that's the first item. Those of you that have just joined us, can you see in chat? I've sent the agenda round, and the first item is the Universal Peace Tower, as you can see. Right, I think given the time, what we'll do is, those that came a bit later, we won't do introductions for everyone. What we'll do is we can introduce ourselves as we work through the agenda. Unless, okay, well, there's only a couple left. So Christian, quickly, introduce yourself. You'll have to unmute. You'll have to unmute.
To introduce myself, well, I'm dedicated to arts and culture, to the education, and I believe that arts and culture can change the world, if we don't see it just as singing, dancing, having fun, but as a strategic tool to calm down society and to reduce hostility. And the best recipe, sometimes you don't have to look into the future. You can sometimes look into the past. And one of the past unexplored spiritual points and widely ignored points is Delphi. And this was the reason that I have the privilege to dig into Delphi, to inspire education, arts and culture. And all of you might know that there were twins in ancient Greece, the Delphic Games praising Apollo, and the Olympic Games praising Zeus, the two gods. And with this, I believe the body is taken care of enough, having, let's say, Tokyo in mind with the Olympic Games, what we made out of them. Spirit is lacking, arts and culture is lacking, and that's I'm committed to. And we are, since 25 years, we are dedicated to perform Delphic Games for youth and Delphic Games for adults every 4 years. And this is the target, to compete in the arts and to create a floor for democracy and getting together. That's it.
And Christian is the Secretary General of the Delphic Games. He didn't mention that. Very important bit. So welcome. And he's speaking from Berlin. Right. I think what we'll do is we will now start with the agenda, because people can introduce themselves when we come to their bit. I'd like to welcome everyone here formally who's joined us. We're a scattered group. We're in London, Italy, Singapore, Hong Kong, Scotland, America, Ireland, Turkey, so we're a global group. This is the World Intellectual Forum, and monthly, we always meet on the 30th of each month. Some of you have been here, others it's new, or you've only just got involved. What we're trying to do here is create a hive of intellectual activity, that we're interested in discussing global problems, but from a spiritual and intellectual perspective. What I mean by intellect is the transcendental faculty of the higher mind. We appeal to academics, also spiritual leaders, seers, sages, Sufis, saints, all welcome. Because what we're trying to do is actualize the highest potential of the global, intellectual thinking community. Because look, the world's in trouble. We all know that. We're in a meltdown situation. And so if we don't organize now, who will? We're on the job. We're in incarnation. Let's get on with it. And so we're discussing 11 critical points. We're doing so, as I said, from a spiritual, intellectual perspective, academic, but I mean academic in the highest. I don't mean the nitpicking detail of trench warfare that some academics think is academia. And our first item is very visionary. I'd like to introduce it briefly and then call on, my colleagues. Now, this idea, Dr. Thumby has already mentioned, Thumby Orani. He will explain it a bit more. And we're joined by some other people involved. Thumby had this vision of, which came from the higher spheres of divine intellect, right? Of building a peace tower, a huge, tall tower dedicated to peace. This just came to him. He's not like a prophet or anything. It came, and he can tell us more about it. I interviewed him about this, and I believe this is a genuine project. I think it's a brilliant idea. So when he told me about it, I thought, let's do it. Peace tower, So we've planned and worked on this, and the Universal Peace Tower is a concrete project now. We want to give birth to it. And the idea is to build like the Burj Khalifa in the Gulf states. These towers are enormous. They're like 100 floors high, taller than any building in London. There isn't even one in New York. We're talking mega tower, right? And there's about 15 of them in the world. There's a couple in India already. And we thought, let's put it at the southern tip of India, near a mountain dedicated to Shiva. We can explain why there, but this is an idea. It's the Tamil part of India. They're people of deep faith, deep spirituality. And the World Intellectual Forum was founded down by sages connected with the Tamil community. So it's our way of saying thank you. And the tower would be dedicated to world peace. Everything in there for would be dedicated to world peace. It would have museums. It would be partly a tourist attraction. There'd be things to go, people would come from all over the world. But it would be groups and organizations working for peace. It would showcase Indian spirituality, obviously, but not exclusively. It would be global. And very important, it would include scientific studies on peace, evolution, and where we are as a planet. Anyway, that's my introduction to it. So can I call on perhaps our friend, well, Thumbi, you should just say a little more. Have I done justice to the project? Do unmute yourself.
Okay. So this Peace Tower project, now renamed as Universal Peace Tower, has three main features. One is the tower itself, about 1,500 feet height, approximately near to the 500 meters. Okay, this will be having two sections, lower tower and upper tower. It will be having a unique architectural features, both externally and internally. So as per your suggestion, there will be some 99 floors to be included in this. At the top of the tower will be a very huge light farm. We place a light farm, and the platform itself will be looking like a lotus. Lotus means purity and honesty, like that. So this light farm at the center, at the top of tower, representing the beginning of the universe, just at the Big Bang, what happened, and that is where everything evolved. So this is a scientific concept that has been told in some scriptures also, like Hinduism. So we amalgamate science and spirituality to understand the universe. What is the purpose of universe, how it was created, and who we humans are. What is the mission for everybody, and where we are going. What is there in the future for us? What is there in the future for the universe? So this will be amalgamated, and there will be a universarium, the second main feature. In this universarium, like a planetarium, we sit and see, but here in the universarium, there will be a realistic space travel ride. During the ride, there will be a commentary given that will be based on the amalgamation of science and spirituality to understand the whole cosmos. It will be something like about 45 minutes to 1 hour ride. And then the third main feature is the statues of all religious gods, major religious gods. It will be placed just outside the tower at the ground level. Now we plan for 90 feet height. So when people visiting there, about some 5,000 visitors per day, they will look out these three main features and come to a realization that we all evolved from the one. And so through this concept, there will be a universal brotherhood that will be realized more and in a fast manner. So now we plan as per your own, I think like an enlightenment. You got the location as Pataloka Hills, that is called Agastya Hills in Tamil Nadu state of India. So this location we are now discussing with the Tamil Nadu government. We have submitted officially to them. And there are some new influential people who have just joined us. who say that this can be done, and they will be talking to the Tamil Nadu government to see how the process can be done to get necessary approvals. So this is the present state, and once the government is approving this, we will get into more action on this for its execution.
Can I just interrupt, Gumbi?
Yeah, thank you.
I just want to ask Shivam to join us very briefly. I know he has another meeting to go to, but just introduce yourself, Shivam, and just explain your work with the Tamil community in America.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear fine. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Hello, everyone. My name is Sivam Velayudam from Canada, Toronto, Canada. And we have our own organization, non-profit organization called Voice of Men 360. The focus is the well-being of boys and men around the world. It's part of IMD, International Men's Day. But for this community, this intellectual team, I'm really honored to be here. I just came to know Murali about a couple of weeks and months back, and then we did an interview about his project. And wherever, however, and I can possibly connect with the people and work with him and help him. I'm working on that. And yeah, that's about. And we do have some connections, some possible individuals here in Canada and around the globe that I can have a meeting and then keep up the communication though. Yeah, thank you.
And you run a kind of radio program, is that right? You have a...
I'm actually part of we have our own live show at our organization, and also I am doing my own Tamil community at Tamil America TV.
Okay, great. And what was your own intellectual background, if you don't mind my asking?
I'm a financial advisor here in Canada.
Right. Okay. Well, pleased to meet you. I'm Canadian by birth, so I'm a Canadian citizen. So say hello.
Nice to meet you. Nice to know that.
Yeah. And okay, well, we'll work on this Universal Peace Tower. It's a totally wonderful project, and I'm glad you're helping. And we do need some men to get involved. So if you can get the men of the world, they often don't get a good deal these days. Being a man has gone out of fashion, you know. But I think men are important. We need men to help the women to make peace, right? So yeah, work is really important. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I had to leave, but I will keep up the communication with Murali and the rest of you guys. So thank you. Pleased to meet you guys, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, pleased to meet you. Okay.
Yes, Sivam, Mr. Sivam can leave about your website or whatever connections in the chat so that other people can see and get connected to you. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah.
Right. Sharmila, I understand you've also talked to Murali about this Universal Peace Tower. Can you tell us a bit how, I mean, your work in education is the kind of visionary thing that could be inside, you know, have a base in the tower. This is my vision. It would be a center for peace education. Does your work involve peace in any way as an educator?
Yeah.
As a psychologist?
Yes, definitely. I give counseling, human psychological counseling, because now India is facing a lot of stress, depression, all those things are going on from the age 3 to 60 years people. So for them, I'm giving a counseling and bringing out them from their emotional negativity and giving them an opportunity to go ahead with their career or lifestyle or with the family member. It's like that. And main thing is I do brain mapping. It is a scientific study of fingerprint pattern and brain loops. So through this assessment, we can understand a child's inborn talent, multiple intelligence, learning style, career options, their strength and weakness. This is what I have done for 12,000 students in India. So that is my core subject. So that will be very useful for upcoming students emotionally, and without any depression and stress, they can study well till their career. This is my actually core subject, and I came here to understand Murali's project, and I'm really happy and thankful for him to be a part of this team. Thank you, sir.
Right, thank you, Shamila. Yes, I mean, I run the Gandhi Foundation School of Nonviolence, which was based in London. And to me, one of the things for the Tower is to promote the possibility of a non-violent world. That's India's greatest gift to humanity. That's what Buddha taught. It's what Mahavira taught. It's what all the great Hindu rishis and sages taught. And it's what Agastya taught. So, you know, how can we use schools education to get across the possibility of non-violence? That's
Thank you so much, sir.
That's the mission of the Tower, shall we say. Okay, I think we need to move on because of time, but thank you for joining us on that topic. The second item on the agenda, which you can all see in chat, is, you know, the question, since the last meeting last month on June the 30th, we've had some very extreme weather events. I don't know what it's been like in your part of the world, but in Europe here, we had some floods that were, all experts say they're worse than anything for the last 1,000 years. In Germany, rivers burst their banks and 200 people died. We've had forest fires going on. And so this is a chance to talk about the problems of extreme weather and global warming, environmental problems. So would anybody like to lead on that? Has anyone studied this in detail? You know, it's obviously a thing that intellectuals are grappling with. And I would just say one thing, which is, I was on a Zoom call last night with people in Scotland. Some of you may know the United Nations conference on, you know, the environment is taking place in Glasgow in November. And it's a really important event. Morag, could you tell us about any news about that event on the ground? Are you going to be involved in some way?
Yes and no. Not directly, because Glasgow has had spikes, an Indian variant of the pandemic of COVID. So because of my disabilities, I'm at high risk, so I can't physically attend anymore. But several of my colleagues are going, and they're discussing things like how Scotland can lead the way into climate change and help to show the world and what we can do as a nation, because Scotland's already is like changed quite a bit of the power into tidal and natural energies. It's like to turn that into natural resources. It's like they've upped the on recycling, etc. There's a lot more recycling bins out there. It's like for clothes, glass, as well as normal recyclables for plastics. The universities are going ahead. It's like with even more projects. It's like both globally, it's like for climate change as well as environmental, and how we as a nation as well as a world can move forward. Scotland is also committed to bringing down their emissions. It's like for their cars by 2035, I think they said. I'd need to double check the date, but they're hoping to lead the world into zero emissions by that time, where most, or if not all, motor vehicles on the roads will be converted either into electric, partial electric, or somehow completely green altogether. And those that can't will be offered grants and funding to help make that possible. Because there are those that, like, that need their transport for work, it's like such as rural communities and all that kind of stuff, which there are a lot of in Scotland. So there'll be a basis of funding in that as well. They're also bringing it more into schools, into education, to get the young people involved. is like how because it's like young people's minds, they're amazing, they're fantastic, they're constantly full of ideas and really enthusiastic. They're our future. So they're getting the schools involved from nursery and primary. Nurseries, it's things like making vegetable gardens and wee feeders for their own gardens. It's like for ecosystem projects. It's like, because nurseries like 2, 3 and 4 year olds, so they can't do an awful lot, but they can start the seed of change. Schools, it's not only the planting their own fruit and veg, it's like right the way through to bigger projects such as recycling, as well as raising funds and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so that's the idea of it. Is like, how can it's not just the larger things, it's also the smaller things, and how is we each of individuals can make that positive change to help create much wider change and bigger change globally, and hopefully get other nations and other countries involved, so that as a collective we all get involved to make that change and create that change and make it happen.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Morag. For you didn't introduce yourself. Just tell them your name and where you live.
Sorry, I do apologise. Morag from Scotland, Loch Lomond in Scotland, which is a little bit out the way. I've got a nice big mountain in my background, just 5 minutes from me. And I get involved with Thomas over several projects. We met on a visit to the Pope, and we've been sort of coercing ever since over various different things, from world peace to education to arts to philosophy to education to all sorts of things, to freedom for Scotland.
That's actually on the agenda a bit later. We're going to talk about Brexit, so we'll do the Scottish independence thing a bit later, Morag, but that is going to be important too. Okay, so thanks for commenting on Glasgow and COP26. Rosalba, you're a great environmentalist. You must have feelings about the pandemic, this runaway climate change. What's it been like in Italy? You'll have to unmute. Sorry, we can't hear you, Rosalba.
In Italy is terrible. Is a situation absurd. We have the Green Pass for we have to vaccine. Is obligatory. Is the obligation to vaccinate. So there is no space for another thought. Is terrible in Italy.
Okay, we're not going to talk about the pandemic yet. That's the next item on the agenda. I was talking more about climate change, like, are you dying of heat, or are there floods, that kind of thing. But I imagine we would have heard about it if Italy was on fire. Does anyone else want to come in as Christian, or actually, well, either Christian or Sabi? You've not spoken before, Sabi. Why has the Delphic Games got an ecological arts component? What is ecological arts, and why is the Delphic Games going to promote that? And what's the link to water there? Can you just summarize that briefly for us? Because this is something very important for people to learn about. You'll have to unmute and do introduce yourself as well.
Hello, Thomas. Thank you very much for inviting me to that wonderful Zoom conversation. My name is Sabahattin Chakral, and you can call me Sabi. It's easier. I'm this Deputy Secretary General of Delphi, of the International Delphi Council, and I'm also responsible for the Public Relations International. I'm very much into topics relating peace, and I think this is the core of all of us here. We want to have peace on this planet, and of course everyone has different ways and methods. And at Delphi we say we have three main areas, which is arts, culture, and science, and we want to interlink all these elements with each other in the best possible way. obviously we are 8 billion people on this planet, and we have to be extremely careful when it comes to connecting things, because we don't only have nice powers, good powers, we have all sorts of powers and also sorts of motivations. And of course, Delphi, especially when we say our main leading motive is water, as I'm wearing here blue, and Olympics. The Olympics has the symbol of fire. We have the water, and water interconnects or interconnected people throughout the times, and water is the source of life. And when it comes to the ecological disciplines, of course, since everything on this planet is connected, we should find ways which are optimal and which cause no harm, but open surfaces and areas for a better living. And therefore, it's obviously for us a very significant area.
Right, thank you very much. Sabi, I'll call you Sabi, it's easier, although Sabahattin has a great ring about it too.
Yeah, Sabi is okay.
But Sabi is originally from Turkey, but now living in Berlin, and very much an international thinking, activist. And so, welcome. Okay, I think let's move on. This is a huge topic, the question of global environmental problems, but we'll move on now to discuss, I suppose, what is a sort of subsection of that, namely the pandemic. Our Secretary General, Dr. Swaminathan, was going to be here. He runs the World Intellectual Forum from Hyderabad. He sent me an hour before we were due to start an apology because he's gone off to get a vaccination against the pandemic. So he's bit the bullet, and that's why he's not with us. Some people on this call will have been vaccinated, others are, playing the waiting game. I just want to sort of say on this point on the agenda that some of you know that I've taken the initiative to pursue the question of the etiology of this pandemic. As a philosopher, I'm a kind of Aristotelian philosopher. And Aristotle said we have to know the causes of things. He was a doctor, as well as his father was physician to Alexander the Great, and he was descended from a long line of doctors. And Aristotle's philosophy was very, very medical in its perspective. I think as a philosopher that we can't cure this planet properly till we know the absolute certain definite origin of this thing. And that's called the etiology in scientific terms. So I've set up with the World Intellectual Forum as a co-participant what's called ICIAOC, which stands for the International Commission of Inquiry into the Etiology of COVID-19. Now why nobody else has done that? I stare, into the sky at night and look at the stars and wonder, because doesn't anyone else care about the origin? I mean, there's so many theories, but for the last 2 years, we've been watching, and wondering where on earth this came from. And of course, it was a natural thing. It came from bats in a cave. It somehow leaked into a food market. That was the original hypothesis. Okay, fine. If you've got evidence, that's great. The WHO team that went into China to investigate didn't find evidence to prove that hypothesis. They did not find definite traces of the actual links. And they say that in their report, which I've read. The other theory is that it might have been bioengineered. It might be human gain-of-function research in a lab somewhere by some crazy scientists, who were paid by whatever to create this thing for whatever reasons. And that is a hypothesis worth exploring. And the media and, the New York Times, Washington Post, they're now carrying articles in scientific journals saying, look, there is some evidence that might be true. It might have been bioengineered. If that's true, that has huge implications to me as a peace researcher. I'm out to find out, the truth on this. And that's why we set up the commission. So I would just want to give you a little brief report back. I've sent out the document, which I think most people on this Zoom call have got. Whether you've read it's another matter, but do. It's only 30 pages PDF, setting out all the different possible hypotheses. And I've sent it to some of the world's leading virologists, epidemiologists, scientific researchers who've spoken about this. And I've had some very interesting replies. And we will be having our own meeting for this international commission in the middle of August, sometime towards the end of August. And any scientists on this call, Kanu, for instance, I'm looking at you, and others, perhaps Susan Jameson, anyone interested in medicine and etiology and prepared to be neutral. We have to keep a straight head and look at all the evidence, not prejudge it. So I've had a very interesting submission from a professor at the University of Hamburg, for instance, who's spent ages researching this. He actually produced a scientific paper about 20 pages long, giving what he thinks is the probable origin. He comes down on the side of it probably is a bioengineered weapon that's leaked, and he gives all the evidence for that. So he's one of the people that will be giving evidence to our commission. But then we have other people, for instance, WIF in Italy, Rebecca Charla, who may join us later, who thinks, no, this is a totally natural thing. And she thinks she can explain how that happened. So our duty as the commission is to hear the evidence, look at it all, not prejudge, and then go away and chew on it. So anyone would like to comment on this? Maybe Susan, what do you think about the state of the world's health at the moment? You're a light doctor. How can light help cure COVID? You'll have to unmute. We can't hear you. No. The microphone. Yeah, there we go.
I just done it. It's okay. I'm sorry. I like to pretend I don't need glasses, so then I can't see anything. Actually, obviously, the mental health is getting more and more appalling. Well, I mean, light is peace. It's the peace of God. It's transforming consciousness. It's huge. It couldn't be bigger. It's our genetic heritage of being godlike, but we never seem to have access to that. So because we were so, if you're in a flood, it's not so easy, is it? So health of the world is deteriorating because people, everyone, even the most enlightened of us, tend to give our powers away in disasters and when we're struggling. So I think there's a lot of enlightenment needed. And one can only do that through education, through talking, through stories, I guess the traditional ways, that people have been doing this for thousands of years.
What is the situation like in Hong Kong with the pandemic? Is it more or less under control? Does everyone mask up? How does it work?
Don't talk about it. I'm so sick of it. We don't have any COVID. We somehow avoided it. We've had 3,000 cases in total and really no deaths. But it doesn't stop it, but they're totally draconian. I mean, we've got people in hotels here for weeks who are double vaccinated and have lots of negative tests. And everyone's still Hong Kong and Singapore are hanging on to the bitter end. They will close the borders and keep masks on.
Okay, so you're dealing with it in a very draconian way, right? Thank you. Kanu, you're a medical specialist as well. Would you like to comment on the pandemic? What's happening in Dubai, in your part of the world? And do introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello everyone. So thank you, Professor Thomas, for having me today on this WIF monthly meeting. And today I can see many new delegates. And I'm Dr. Kanu Megha, and I'm working as an assistant professor in a university where I'm teaching various subjects related to biotechnology and various other disciplines. And I have worked on neurological, I'm basically on neurosciences, and I have worked during my PhD and postdoc on the neurodegenerative disorders. And here in Dubai, like the things are quite normal, and like most of the people are vaccinated, and the borders are also open for other countries. And since everyone knows that Dubai is famous for tourism, so they can't afford to close their borders for other countries, and here everything seems normal, and all the things are, I mean, everything is open. But yes, masks we are using, and we are having normal protocols for the COVID, which I mean most of the other countries are also using.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you, and I hope you'll play a role in the commission itself when we have our hearings. And you know, I hope you've read the document.
Yes.
I've said. Okay, so that will focus on etiology. Right. If there's nobody else wants to jump in there, I think we'll move on to the next item, which is.
I could jump in a little bit. I didn't answer your question about etiology.
Okay.
I believe things just don't happen randomly. There are no mistakes. Didn't come from bats or garbage. And, you know, as for laboratory leaks, how unlikely. Nothing happens randomly. So that's what I feel. I'm quite cynical about these things.
So just to summarize, where do you think it came from then?
Oh, I think any government with an axe to grind, but the two large ones are the US and China. And probably, I mean, they're probably at fault somehow.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, see what you can find out. You're our spy in China, okay? Go to Wuhan, report back, all right. Okay, let's move on now. We come to a very important topic. The fourth topic on our agenda is the Middle East. And, you know, the ongoing problems of the Middle East. We're going to discuss Israel-Palestine and what possibility of peace there. But we also have to look at the bigger picture, Iran and relations with other countries, Syria and the Lebanon. I watched a BBC report on what's happening in the Lebanon last night, and it made me tearful because the Lebanon is in total meltdown. I did invite a colleague who's Lebanese to come on this forum, but you know, their society has crashed. Their money system has completely crashed. Since the attack on their, or the explosion on their port, which destroyed one of their great, you know, activity centers, hubs, they're in total meltdown. So my heart goes out to the Middle East. What have they done to deserve all this, you know? So just to summarize, and then I'll call on colleagues to speak, is as the World Intellectual Forum, we're focusing on the spiritual side of this, the philosophical side of it. I look around the Middle East, I see some of the greatest countries on the planet spiritually. They've created the great religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and Zoroastrianism, and the Baha'is, just to name a few. And they produce some of the greatest thinkers of history. So why can't we get for instance, a Shia-Sunni peace treaty? This is something I've worked on for years. Why are the Shias and Sunnis still fighting in the Yemen and in Syria? Let's have a Shia-Sunni peace treaty. Why can't there be an Israeli-Iranian peace treaty? You know, Israel and Iran, they actually are so interconnected, their histories. I mean, it was the Iranian Shah that sort of let the Jews in exile go home and rebuild Jerusalem. And a lot of the ideas in Judaism were taken from Zoroastrian concepts, including the Messiah, the Seher, the very Messiah that Judaism thinks is part of its core belief, according to Maimonides, was a Zoroastrian idea. They borrowed it. You know, so I think we need, as the World Intellectual Forum, we can help heal these conflicts at the spiritual level. I'm hoping to invite to our next meeting a senior Muslim cleric from Iran who can address these matters as a Shia scholar. And you know, it needs some work here. I've set up, with World Intellectual Forum involvement and Institute of Peace Studies, which I also direct, the International Commission for the Establishment of a Palestinian State. I've done some thinking about this, deep thinking over many years, and come to the conclusion that we need to help a Palestinian state into being, but only one that will be declared non-violent, that will not be a security threat to Israel. That's the precondition. There has to be like a built into its very foundation, a peace treaty relationship with Israel and other neighbors. So I'd like to call on Professor B.M. Jain, who's read the document, the founding document of ICEPS, as it's called, International Commission for the Establishment of a Palestinian State. Now, let me introduce Professor Jain. He is a professor of international relations in America, of Indian origin and a nonviolence specialist. But he's coined the phrase geopsychology. Perhaps B.M. Jain, you could introduce yourself, explain what geopsychology is, and then just comment on the ICEPS proposal. You'll have to unmute. We can't hear you at the moment. No unmuting happening yet. You need to find the button. Let me see.
Awesome.
Right, you must be able to unmute yourself, I think. It's in the bottom left of your screen where it says mute. If you take the cursor, there it is. Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Greetings.
Now, I'm B.M. Jain from the University of Rajasthan, Jaipur. I served in this university for nearly 3 decades, and thereafter I have been, before that also, I was visiting professor at the University of New York, Binghamton, UNESCO chair, University of Jaume, geopsychology theory of international relations in the 21st century. I'm really very grateful to Professor Davran, who provided me this unique opportunity to share my thought on my new book. And I have conducted research and I've been teaching also. I taught this subject for more than 4 decades, the Middle East, Israel-Palestine relations. So I would touch upon Israel-Palestine issue from 3-4 perspectives, but my main emphasis would be the geopsychological dimension. Now, this is a new theory, and therefore I would like to introduce very briefly that what is geopsychology. Geopsychology is a set of history, geography, culture, religion, ethnicity, shared by common history, shared by common culture, which help in the formation of perceptions, belief system of ruling elites, influential sections of society, intellectuals, media, and people in general. Now, this we need to understand. And this is a very interesting topic because I'm taking up this subject not from the ideological point of view. I'm apolitical. I must tell you very frankly, isn't it? Because in my family, there have been MPs and member of parliament and MLAs, but I kept myself totally aloof, isn't it? So I'm apolitical. And being a research scientist, I have looked at this problem from geopsychological angle. So geopsychology is a totality of the images of belief system of perception. Now, based on history, geography means geographical terrain, culture, ethnicity, religion, nationalism, so on and so forth. Now, Arab-Israel relations, from the historical perspective, we see there have been violent claims, Jews and Palestinians years. 1948, when Israel was established, and its establishment was through unilateral declaration, because the United Nations did not give recognition to Israel. But during the Cold War, there was a geopolitical dimension that United States wanted to have a strong stranglehold in the Middle Eastern region, and therefore it needed allies, partners. And therefore, Israel became a very close strategic ally of the United States since 1948. Everybody knows it. With the military, diplomatic support of the United States, Israel has been intransigent. Now, this reason being, a superpower is supporting a particular country. Please don't mind it. I'm putting all the facts for you. It is for you to decide. It is for you to analyze. It is for you to conclude. So, what happened in 1956? There was conflict between Israel and Britain, and France had joined. But in June 1967, a 6-day war took place. And in that war, Israel had captured Gaza Strip, that belongs to Palestine. It captured Golan Heights, belongs to Syria. It captured Sinai Peninsula, belongs to Egypt. And the western part, that is the Jordan, isn't it? So that is the root cause. That is the root cause. If seen from the historical perspective, because geopsychology also includes history, past narratives are very important because people want to keep their memories alive. In this book, I have examined that the mainstream theories, that is realism, structural realism, liberalism, neoliberalism, the offensive defensive paradigm by Mearsheimer, they have been unable to explain the reasons behind the ongoing conflicts, violence, and bloodshed. So in my book, I have argued, yes, millions and trillions of dollars could have been saved if America had understood geopsychology of the people of Afghanistan, in particular, Taliban, isn't it? Because Taliban comes from the Pashtun community. They are known as the warriors. They are known as Pathans. Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, he's a Muslim, but he's a Pathan. So Pathan is one who always respects, the promise, abides by the promise. Now, the Afghan society is governed by the social code. Please do remember, social code. What is that social code? The social code of honor, the social code of revenge, isn't it? Now, therefore, America has been unable to defeat the United States. America has been unable to defeat the Taliban. Why? Because Taliban believes that Muslims and non-Muslims who are infidels, they cannot be trusted. They must be butchered, isn't it? Now, this is the philosophy, because America could not understand, the geographical, very tough, rugged terrain of Afghanistan, and it had attacked, Afghanistan in October 2001, and this is the longest war in history. Had it understood or had a proper knowledge, adequate knowledge of the Afghan society, because Soviet Union could not subdue, could not dominate, isn't it? It had to withdraw after a decade or so. From 1917, from 70 to 80, what happened in that during that period, 79 to 89? Soviet Union could not. Panjshir valleys, particular area where Soviet Union forces could not think of entering. That is the situation. So you cannot fight with your sophisticated weapons or that, because that is the character of the people. So here, in this regard, Arab-Israel conflict, there are 4 perspectives, as I've told you. From the historical perspective, as I've told you, that America intervened in this region for its geopolitical reasons, of course. It did not understand, the psychological predisposition of the leadership. It did not understand the culture of the Arab society. Instead, it had, as a superpower, it had supported Israel, isn't it? So in 1967, the UN Security Council had passed resolution number 242, under which Israel was asked to withdraw its forces from the occupied territory, isn't it? That is the Gaza Strip, isn't it? That is from Golan Heights. They are still, with Israel. So naturally, it created a kind of, a kind of mistrust between the two societies, that is, the Jews. Second viewpoint that I would like to put straightforward, that is the narrative of competitive victimhood. This is very interesting, from geopsychological point of view, the narrative of competitive victimhood. Now, there are psychological ingredients of victimhood. For instance, Israel views themselves mainly through the prism of being the victim of anti-Semitism. Now, this is the view. Israelis view themselves mainly through the prism of being the victim of anti-Semitism, while Palestinians view that they have suffered under Israel's military occupation. So here is there is a competitive psychology of victimhood. Competitive psychology of victimhood. Each one is blaming the other, isn't it? So this blame game goes on, and people have been trying to find out, the solution. No military solution, no political solution, reconciliation process, negotiation. Even Henry Kissinger's shuttle diplomacy, isn't it, failed to bring about peace in this region. Secondly, what is important, that United States, of course, during Carter administration, there was Camp David Accord in 1978. That was, it had, brought some ray of hope that there would be at least, the temporary peace between Israel and Palestine. But what happened in 1980, there was war between Iran and Iraq for 10 years. Then in 1991, the Gulf War took place. So this region became the victim of geopsychological impulses on both the sides. This we need to understand. So this victimhood, as a matter of fact, this competition for victimhood is the core of the protracted nature of the Israel-Palestine conflict.
Yeah.
Now we need to understand, as scholars, we need to understand how can we resolve this intractable conflict, isn't it? Because both the sides, isn't it, they are arguing that you are responsible for it, isn't it? Now, Israelis have been blaming Palestinians that you have occupied our territory. Palestinians have been saying that you have occupied our territory in the Gaza. Who is wrong, who is right? Now, this is the problem that we need to go into. If you go through all the speeches,
What's the solution? Just a few words. We have a colleague from Herzliya in Israel who I want to bring in, Gila Haron, and I hope you can comment.
Let me give me 2 or 3 minutes, because I'm not taking side with Israel or Palestinians, but I have analyzed this problem based on my empirical study, and I want that there must be a permanent peace because peace is the only alternative. But the thing is that there are so many variables, so many factors. But the most important factor is the geopsychological impulses. They are very strong, very heavy, isn't it, in the minds of the people of Palestine and also of Israel, of course. And I can reply. This is one of the important points which I had raised.
Sure.
Then
you raised a very crucial point, actually, BMJ. We're grateful to you. I think in the fact of timing, can I suggest you put in writing any comments you have on the ICEP's proposal that we were discussing, the International Commission for the Establishment of a Palestinian State? I want you to do a proper response to it based on your theory of geopsychology, because you're the world's leading expert in this, and we're also, you've raised the question of Afghanistan, which is the next item on our agenda. We're going to hear from my colleagues in London about that. But your work is really important, and I think everyone should, get your book, read it. This is pioneering stuff. When I studied international relations at the LSE, you should have been a professor there, because they never look at of international relations. So thank you so much for your comments. Gila, are you there on this call? Can you just give some comments back to what Professor Jain has said? Do you think it's possible to make peace in the Middle East? And what's your formula? Gila seems to have vanished. She's probably trying to rejoin. Bircan, Unva, you're in Turkey. Do you want to comment on your view of the Middle East peace process? How do you see it from Turkey? What can we do to help? And in Lebanon, I mean, it's a total meltdown.
I am not in political science, but from the human rights perspective and rights and respects for all nations and all peoples, 9/11 really kind of sharpened the hatred and division and polarization. And I had then, as a reaction to 9/11, if each country, if the world didn't leave that poor, that desperate for the becoming live bomb, then we wouldn't have 9/11. So as a reaction, I had a essay and I posted and right out 20 days or a month later. Then later on, I dedicated that one in 24 to the children of the world. And now I'm going to actually make copy paste and I'm going to share here, just I've done. That was initially, and still it exists, and it also led my organization, Light Millennium, becoming a member of the United Nations as an NGO. This was the part of the project that we were envisioning as a solution, what's going on in the world, that is global home and school. What I meant, what I had envisioned was and is and will be, as long as I am alive, but it is still as a vision, nothing more than that. This also relates with the education, because education has two sharp edges, especially in the Middle East, especially in the Islamic world, and we have faced and diminution, intelligence, and even the food levels. People can't afford becoming just the basic normal intelligent level. Everything is pushing not just Israel, Middle East, but the global level. It also relates somewhat with the COVID. So my perception, this goes also with your initial Peace Tower project, it goes with the education, it goes with the Middle East. When we connect the dots, that and also I've been recently thinking about this space tourism and Elon Musk and we also, so if they put that much money, and I am for space and space development, but we don't still have at this moment to keep the children who've been left orphaned, who've been suffering, and they can become, organ trafficking, human trafficking, terrorism. So catching up the kids in the world, especially in the Middle East, especially those in the countries in the under terrorism, to create them a global home and school until they either have occupation and graduated, and so pay back to support other children like them. So we don't produce yet, even including the United Nations, including the UNICEF, we still don't have what's going on with these children. And we haven't touched, for instance, statelessness. And there are 50 million people stateless. They can be anything, no one can blame, and no country is responsible, and we don't know what's going to happen to those people. And 70 million heart and more are children, young. So when we put all pieces together, and in terms of your opening statement in relation with Palestine and Israel, my question is, yes, certainly the solution must be nonviolence, but there is a big but. If or when will Israel ever agree on 1968 UN resolution? Will ever able to pull back the land occupied? So if anything can bring Israel to that point, not just as it is, then they achieve and they want to get more and more and complete the erase Palestine as a nation, as a race, all that. So if Israel could back up and then really agree for a peaceful solution, and I think that will also set up to the world, and I respect your comment, indeed Israel and Palestinian issue is the world issue. As long as conflict is going to continue, there won't be peace in the world. So it is the heart of the world, and it is kind of everyone is fighting for it, using religion, using politics, and then also in the name of controlling the natural resources, historical, cultural, mineral, all that. Over to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for those remarks. Yes, and Birjan lives in, well, mainly in New York, and is one of the liaison people for us to the UN. So we'll talk about that another time. I thank our colleagues for speaking on this issue. I'm sorry that Gila seems to have lost connectivity. Her view, I will just say, is that, you know, if there is going to be a Palestinian state, it has to be really carefully thought through. What Israel doesn't want is, what they're afraid of is that if they give statehood to Palestine, it'll become a haven for terrorism. They're terrified of Iran, that state will become then like a launching pad for yet more rockets and missiles to come into Israel. And so that, I'm just putting, you know, what Gila's point of view is. And I'm trying to reassure her, I want her to be on the commission, is that no, all the Palestinians I've met are incredibly intelligent, incredibly intellectual. We have Sari Nusseibeh, who was the rector of the University of East Jerusalem, who's one of the greatest philosophers of contemporary Islam. He's written books about Aristotle in Islamic and Arab thought. He's on our board. People like that don't want to start throwing rockets. You know, they want a peaceful, non-violent Palestine with an economy that functions, where they're not constantly being arrested and hassled, living in harmony with an Israel that's living in peace. You know, that's the goal of the ICEPS Commission. Okay, let's move on. We now have to jump from the frying pan into the fire, as they say, and look at Afghanistan. You know, in a few days' time, America ends its commitment to Afghanistan, Britain likewise. We've been there for 2 decades, spent, I don't know, billions and billions of pounds, and yet the country is still back to square one. I'd love to hear from our colleagues in London, Shahpour Amini and Asiya, in turn, to give us your view on what's going on in Afghanistan now, and what can Afghan intellectuals do about this? Because, you know, you're the hope for peace in that country, as I see it. Shahpour, do introduce yourself and just say a little bit about what you've been doing for Afghan culture.
Greetings, and we're honored to be among you, and very much enjoyed and learned what has been said. Well, sadly, yes, the situation in Afghanistan has gone worse, and the Taliban advanced in the north, and unfortunately, the killings and making people leave their homes sadly continues, and the American troops and NATO troops leaving the country, of course, made the situation worse, unfortunately. And the Afghan people were hopeful to see international community being involved in Afghanistan, and they were hopeful that they might have some power over the Taliban and the neighboring countries, that they could ease the suffering and bring them to a sort of dialogue table to settle down the differences and listen to their demands and see what could happen. But unfortunately, although the peace talk is going ahead and the Taliban representatives are visiting different countries and they're almost accepted as a group that they could have a role in the government or the future of Afghanistan. But what is frightening is, of course, their ideology and their insisting on establishing an emirate in Afghanistan, and not believing in, of course, democracy or election in Afghanistan is very frightening, especially for what Afghanistan has achieved for the last 20 years for the freedom of speech, freedom of media, women activities and women's being involved in politics and everything else is something that now with Taliban, people are quite afraid that, you know, what could happen. And what is more worrying is that American are taking thousands of interpreters with their families out of Afghanistan, and they are fearing that, you know, something might happen to them when the Taliban take control, which to me that shows that, you know, if that happened to a few thousand of interpreters, definitely that could happen to anyone over there, to those women who are in government offices, to those women who are teachers or students. I think everyone will be in danger if they take control or form their own government. And of course, Afghans are very much still insisting on international community that they could sort of put more pressure to stop the war and killings. And if they want the two sides to have a peaceful dialogue and be together in forming a government, but how can you kill civilians and how can you sort of destroy more sort of cultural heritage in Afghanistan and still claim that you're working for peace, or you're willing to have a peaceful or a normalized country? It is sad, and of course Afghans are getting together around the world, forming different peace councils, talking about peace and what the roles of international community and Afghans could do. We in Afghan Academy International in London, we have formed a group of Afghan intellectuals, academics who could have a say in this. And so far, we drafted a letter sending to the European Union, United Nations, and other international institutions and governments to see if they could put more pressure on Taliban to agree on an unconditional, urgent ceasefire, and then that the dialogue could continue. But sadly, from what's happening, somehow it seems impossible. And it's what is more frightening is that when Taliban are committed atrocities and the killings, they also capture that on video, and you could see their atrocities, that their troops going and killing people and even capturing soldiers and killing them. And while they're still dead on the floor, they're still shooting on them. And of course, it is not acceptable to anyone in the world. And Afghans are quite frightened. And we do have, of course, a problem inside Afghanistan, different warlords, different groups, everyone trying to do their own thing and try to get the power and a share of wealth that is pouring there. But Afghans definitely need the support of international community, the support of intellectuals, academics, thinkers, like everywhere else that has problem. And sometimes we lose hope when we see like the problem in Middle East still continues after very, very long time. How can, you know, they in one day it could solve the problem in Afghanistan? But still, we are hopeful, and we do what we can do to raise the voice of Afghans and still promote peace and respect for each other, and to do something positive. But sadly, it is out of control.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shapur, for your wise words. Can you introduce your dear wife, Asiya? We'd love to hear from you. Do introduce yourself, Asiya, please.
Yes, hello, hi. Nice to meet you all. Thank you. Yeah, you're on the spot saying that, yeah, we're going to the fire. You know, I am very upset, to be honest, that the international community had 20 years to actually work and, you know, use the funds that have been actually poured into Afghanistan in the right direction. Unfortunately, I believe that the 4 decades or nearly 5 decades of war in Afghanistan has totally damaged the cultural heritage of Afghanistan. The foundations where international peace was actually practiced. I believe that Afghanistan had problems, but its enemy, it's its own location, and it's all about power. Whoever is actually owns Afghanistan owns Asia, I would say. And I'm really deeply upset about the fact that you know, international powers, like main powers in the world, have actually only just focused on their own benefits and the use of power and sort of means of actually just using Afghanistan for their own sort of proxy wars. Unfortunately, Afghan people are the main people who have actually suffered. They are the victims, and there are human rights abuses continuously happening since 1978, when Afghanistan was sort of invaded by the Russians, and the American invasion again 20 years ago has nothing, you know, done nothing better, to be honest.
Tell us about your work as a filmmaker, Asiya. Tell us about your work as a filmmaker. How can film help shed some peace light on all this?
Well, yeah, I mean, I am actually, you know, I believe that education does help to, you know, promote awareness and sort of raise awareness and sort of stop unnecessary human rights abuses. And I'm actually using film as a medium to sort of raise awareness about these different things. I am also involved sort of with the community here, and we have got various different projects running to sort of support them whilst they're away from Afghanistan. But of course, I mean, you know, wherever you go, I mean, wherever you're born, you are actually attached to that country. You will never forget that. That's of course the fact. Many people might be actually living in other countries, but they're deeply sort of upset and hurt throughout the years. I mean, many people have suffered enough, endured enough, and it's now 50 years that Afghan people are being killed. I would say this is a genocide of the Afghan people. Of the Afghan nation, of Afghan, you know, foundations which existed in Afghanistan. Afghanistan was an international, I would say, you know, the people got on, whatever their problems, they got on. They actually had mechanisms of negotiating peace, maintaining peace amongst each other. We have got so many different ethnicities, you know, who used to sort of live next to each other without borders. And Afghanistan was a multinational, you know, international community in its own right. We have got, you know, Tajiks, Pashtuns, Hazaras, all of them actually living amongst each other. Although, I mean, yeah, of course, every country has got their own sort of problems. That's not to say. But the international community, since their arrival, they have not, maybe they built, you know, Kabul, they, you know, built big towers, but they have actually damaged the foundations of Afghanistan itself, of Afghan families, of Afghan ways of life, its culture, its heritage. They have bombarded the buildings. And if they wanted to bring or support Afghanistan, they could have done it. Unfortunately, I am very, I voice out these issues because it's important that they need to be said. It's time that, the international community actually understands their mistakes, and it's their duty to sort of support back and reinstate what has been lost throughout the last 5 decades. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that very moving contribution. Shapul, can I just ask a question? If other people have questions for our guests, please do put your hand up. What you said about barbarism and atrocity killings is very worrying to me. It reminds me of something I've been learning about Simon Bolivar and his war to liberate, Latin America. At a certain point in the fighting against the Spanish Royalist army, the Spanish Royalists started disfiguring bodies. They would capture them and chop the heads off, or cut legs off. It became very brutal. Is that what's going on? What on earth are the Taliban doing? I mean, that's not Islamic. Are they not supposed to be an Islamic army? How could they be doing these atrocities?
I mean, yes, their action speaks louder than their belief. I think. I don't think that they're not even in the first step of being a Muslim or a human being, because their actions are against humanity and everything else. In the last few days, we had in London and around the world demonstrations against Pakistan, because Afghans strongly believe that Pakistan has a role there, and they have evidence that people are crossing the borders with the sort of Pakistan militia going inside Afghanistan. Otherwise, for a group like that, how can Afghan army cannot cope with them? How can over 40 countries inside Afghanistan with NATO and American powers, how can they not sort of get rid of them or weaken them? Just people with that kind of clothes and just motorbikes. They go from south to north and conquering cities and making people run away. And even sadly, they force the woman to enter into marriage. In some places, we have videos that people share that they ask the young girls from families to enter into marriages with their Taliban in the north. And I think it's a shame that they call themselves Muslims. I mean, it's very easy to learn something about Islam and then just, get the weapon and without understanding that, without getting the right concept or context of that and practice that. As I said, it is something that was there from beginning, and I think they haven't changed at all. What has changed, I think, it's their brutality, that it's gone from what it was known when they took the control in Kabul. Now what they are doing in different cities that they conquer and get under control, it is really bad. And they basically just holding people and, as you rightly said, cutting their throats for anyone. You see the killing of young soldiers, very young soldiers, 20 years old, 21 years old, the soldiers. And when they capture them, they just massacre them. And while they are on the ground, still they shoot at them. I think, I mean,
it's utterly shocking.
Yes, it is an evil hand, it's an evil action, and they cannot be human, they cannot be Muslims, they cannot label themselves anything, just terrorists, to be honest. And how can they accept such a group to share power, and especially not with a proper ceasefire and stop killing, then at least that will say something different. But where
they must have some kind of intellectuals behind them. There must be someone there thinking this is a good idea. They're using terrorism. We ought to somehow reach out and somehow talk to these people. I don't know how we do it. Birjan has had a hand up like a very good class member. Birjan, you have a question for us.
Yes, because what is happening in Afghanistan is kind of has a direct correlation with Turkey. Now, after 5 million refugees in Turkey from Syria and Iraq, now there is a huge discussion about 5 to 10 million Afghan might migrate it, and there is so many records, news, and discussion every day. 100,000 people are coming, and interestingly, mostly are men, and that also scares Turkish people. That if those are terrorism, and also whenever they got the order, wherever, whomever, and also they may burn out and start again the conflict within Turkey. But there isn't any policy by the international community when they, the warlords and conflicts and stealing all the historical arts and cultural commodity, they just wipe out and kill, and then people now escape to look for another life. But this also causes emptying the country, and then they can do whatever they want to, but there isn't any policy. We don't hear what's going on to those Afghans who doesn't want in Afghan, and they are coming to Turkey, and perhaps also Turkey might be bridge to pass to another countries, which also the Syrian are trying. So all has been said, very connected with what Shapur mentioned. But my question is, what is his perception for those refugees currently already fleeing, escaping, and not it's like 5,000-10,000, like 100,000, millions, and more to come? What is the vision to bring a global solution to that?
Okay,
thank you.
Well, sadly, I don't see any solution to that, because at the moment, in Afghanistan, it is not like, if in Kabul there's a problem, people go to another city. The problem is everywhere, and the warlords and the Taliban in particular, when they are in control, it is very easy to live anywhere in the country. And although the NATO and the international community were there, they did some, of course, the nation building and trying to put some good efforts and making the army, the police forces, and other contributions. But still the risk of being a victim, not only to Taliban, but also to other warlords and elsewhere, which is not as bad as, of course, as the Taliban. But people are still living, and sadly, some countries have come to agreement with the government of Afghanistan that people could return there and they will be safe, which is not the case. And I think people should be allowed to claim asylum, refugee, political asylum wherever they reach, and that there should be a proper policy for that. And as I said, people are still in risk. And as I already said earlier, when Britain and American provide help for thousands of interpreters and their families to leave Afghanistan, that shows that everybody is in risk, and you could be in risk when they look at your appearance. If you're a woman, you have to disappear completely, stay at home, and even if you come out, you're in trouble. And work-wise, university-wise, walking alone in the street will be a disaster for them. And for, of course, for the young ones as well, you know, you have to have certain appearance acceptable to Taliban. And I don't think they have a proper policy. I think their aim, although people say that, you know, they're there to bring instability to Iran and Russia and other countries, but whatever they do internationally or to the neighbors, but what's happening inside Afghanistan, I think is not acceptable to anyone, and the situation has gone really worse, and the killing it continues.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Question from Christian.
As you know, I'm a man of culture, dedicated to arts and culture. And I heard with great interest what our Afghanistan friends just told and said, if, let's say, culture is fading away, there is no community anymore. And culture, as you know, is also a floor where the most different people met and meet. And I met some years ago a former military member of the German army, a very high-ranking officer serving in Afghanistan for years. And he said he and his brother went to Afghanistan, and his brother fell in love with the country, with the people. And after his term in office, or during the term in office, he learned the language of the people. And thereafter, he remained there and went to the so-called warlords and said, how can I help you? And they said, we don't need any support with the schools. And he said, okay, I just show you how you do it yourself. Because if you destroy your own work, it's your fault. If you keep it because it's yours, you take care of it. And then he said, what for we should educate? He heard the questions and he answered, well, you have to educate men and women. All the women doesn't need the education so much. He said, well, if you are not feeling well, if you need services, you have knowledgeable women around. And knowledgeable woman means education. So you better start educating them that they become independent, that they assist and can even strengthen you. It sounds possibly very naive, but it sank into my memory. Because he said, we have to reduce the fear, and we have to, let's say, reduce the Western arrogance of having their own recipe of living together. And our way is exactly the way the world should grow. And something must be, we have to come aware, it's not us having the recipe of peace in hand. We can just listen, learning, and giving respect. And if we give respect, not tolerance. Tolerance means, okay, you do what you want, I do what I want. If you give respect to that, what grow without our influence, all of a sudden, you reach the same eye height. And this so-called peace concept was the base of reviving the Delphic games of ancient times for today. Because we recognize we are trained in Western societies competing the hell out of it. I have to be better. I want to overcome the other. Instead, what do we share? And if we take that, what we share, all of a sudden we recognize, oh my God, we share much more than dividing us. And with this, we went to what shares society. And we came to the conclusion, okay, one example we have in sports, and the other, arts, culture, tradition. If you admire your roots wherever you come from, then all of a sudden, you admire a part of yourself. Because when you give respect, you receive respect.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Christian.
Sorry, Thomas. This I wanted to say that we are so much focusing on what divides us. I believe we have to focus on that what unites us. And this is a personal influence of us.
Sure.
Person can unite us.
Okay. No, I agree totally. We're going to come to the Delphic Games properly in a minute. So just hold your passion, which I greatly respect. And we know that we're coming to the arts very shortly. I just want to finish with the Afghan item because it's so vital. Thank you for raising it. Shahpur and Asiya, I hope you will consider yourselves coordinators of the World Intellectual Forum for the Afghan community. I know no one better placed. And from now on, we will work more closely together. When I was in London, Shahpur and I worked quite closely together. We went at one point prior to 9/11, we went and talked to the Afghan embassy. We met the brother of Shah Ahmed Massoud, and we've been at this peacemaking in Afghanistan game for too long, actually, Shahpur. It's embarrassing. So we've got to finally pull this off. You know, this is not acceptable. Just to summarize, I think the international community have to get serious about peace in Afghanistan. We have to bring them all to the conference table. Pakistan has to be involved. If Pakistan is actually helping these Taliban fighters commit atrocities, we need to call them out. They have to be brought to the peace table. So does Iran, so does everyone else, you know, and India, you know, so I will work with you on that tirelessly. We're just the intellectuals, but we can do our bit, you know. And the academics of Afghanistan, the mind has power. Let's not underestimate it. These politicians and warlords, you know, they steal the thunder from the intellectuals. It's time we claimed it back a bit. So thank you anyway for raising that huge issue. And just to say, in my commentary on the Quran, which some people know about, I'm providing an intellectual blueprint for the Taliban. If they actually read the Quran ever, and they listen to my commentary, they would put their guns down. And I cannot stress that enough. I've spent 10 years doing this commentary, which is a peace commentary. And I've also written a book about the history of 9/11, which kickstarted the whole Afghan invasion by America and Britain. And that was the killing of Shah Ahmed Massoud as well, 2 days before the buildings in New York were attacked. And this is a mystery. The story we've been told in history isn't factual. I've researched the actual, what may have happened. And I've set up an international historical commission for 9/11, which is for historians. And we will be meeting on 9/11 this year, in a couple of months' time. So I'm on the trail there. And I hope anyone that's interested in that mystery can join us. Because again, I take the view truth will lead to peace. That's what Gandhi said. There's no other way round apart from truth. Okay. Right. Moving on. The next item on the agenda is those of...
Sorry, Thomas, can I just very, very, very quickly, I promise I'll keep it short. On the subject of the Taliban and the women, I don't know if anyone saw it or who has access to Sky TV. There was a couple of documentaries. It was called The Confessions of the Taliban Mobile. And it was one of our troops that managed to get a mobile from this young man. And this reporter done a deep dive into why he left, because he left from here, left from the UK. And he was diagnosed with ADHD, he had learning difficulties, he had all these other problems. And he got little to no help here. and he ended up in the system. He started to get into trouble. He eventually joined a small faction of his mosque, and then his friends started to see a change in him. He started to become more withdrawn. He started to get more extreme with the religion. It didn't really have anything to do with the religion. Some of his views became changed and warped, and when they questioned him, he was like, I'm not interested, and he cut those ones out of his life. So one of the things that was questioned is, how can we change this culture? So stop these young men from being turned, from going over there. What makes them want to go? What makes them want to go, I'm leaving all my family, I'm leaving my friends, I'm leaving that, and I'm going to travel thousands of miles to join these people. That has to change. That has to turn.
Right.
It's like these young men need help. It's a mindset, because one of the things that they say is, it's like they're saying to them, come to us, we'll give you love, we'll give you a community, we'll give you passion, we'll give you something to fight for, we'll give you this, we'll give you that, we'll give you. They're making them all these promises. And some of the videos that they showed, it was like children playing at war. It's like they were giving them hand grenades and things like that, and getting them to shoot things and into a field. Really, that's all it was. And they were shouting and jumping for joy. It was like, yeah, well done, that's fantastic, well done you, we're so proud of you. And I was like, and as the reporter said, he'd done nothing but throw a hand grenade into a hole. But it's that constant praise, it's that constant, yeah, well done, we're so proud of you, we're so that. If he'd maybe got that back home,
yeah,
he maybe never would have left in the first place.
This was a normal,
not gotten into trouble. So that was one of the things that they talked about the Taliban. It was the same with the girls. They were told, come to us. It's like, you can help with the children, you can be involved with education, you can be involved in this and that and the next thing. We'll give you a role. And then as soon as they went, they were put into hotels, and then they were told that they're not being allowed to leave unless they married who they chose. So they were physically locked in this place until they'd been conformed into their thoughts, into their thinking, into their way of doing, into their way of dressing, into their way of everything, their entire mindset, and they were not allowed to leave until this happened. But of course, they didn't know what they were walking into until it was too late and they were there. And then, of course, because of what they were leaving to, the government went, no chance we taking you back. That's just not happening.
Right. No, thank you.
It's changing that.
That raises lots of huge issues about why war is so attractive to people in the West and worldwide. I think we have to make peace as attractive. We have to make the peace movement more attractive so that they get involved with those who are struggling for peace. Okay, I want to move on just to flag up a couple of points. On the agenda number 6, we're going to talk about, in case you're not aware of it, the World Intellectual Forum wrote and promulgated the first ever cyber peace treaty. Wars are now fought online. They're information conflicts. And you raised how young people can be recruited for terrorist groups and so on online, Morag. So we need a cyber peace treaty. And the World Intellectual Forum has written a draft of this, proposed it. I just want to report on that. And it's very topical because you may or may not know, there's been a huge discovery here in France and Europe that a software company based in Israel has marketed a particular software called the Pegasus. Well, the software is not called that. There's a Pegasus group of media specialists have discovered that this software enables anyone to infiltrate the phones of cabinet ministers in France. Macron called a meeting of the National Security Council about this. It's a sort of spyware that gets into your phone, and then they know everything you're talking about all the time. And if you're a cabinet minister or a president, I mean, that's pretty extraordinary. The stuff is made in Israel, and Israel sells it to whoever wants to buy it. So this is and that is contrary to the proposed cyber peace treaty, right? It means that what we need to do as a world is realize that wars have gone on online. And so the question of Russian and American response to this problem is huge, because Americans accuse Russia of spying on them and infiltrating and doing their elections and stuff. Russia has the same response. And if you listen to Putin, he was interviewed recently, he was asked about this. But actually Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, has called for a cyber peace treaty at the UN level. And, you know, we do have a Russian colleague on the board of the World Intellectual Forum. It's a pity he's not here to talk about this topic. Professor Chumakov, who's a philosopher. To me, this is an ethical and moral issue. The internet has to be cleaned up and used only for peace, not for militarism. So I just wanted to flag that up. BM Jain, who was going to speak about this, had to go to a meeting. He's at another meeting in Rutgers University, unfortunately. So I want to come on to Brexit and Scotland and Ireland. And if Sean is with us, you know, colleagues know I've been against Brexit for a long time because I see it as a ridiculous insult to the Scottish and Irish people who didn't vote for Brexit. Sean, would you like to give us an update from Ireland? What's happening in Irish politics and philosophy? Is all well in the Emerald Isle, or is there turbulence? I mean, you know, the impact on Ireland is that the Troubles may come back. And I think there is some fighting being happening in Northern Ireland, Belfast and places. What's the scene now, Sean?
Yeah, good day, good evening, Thomas, or whatever time zone we're in. Yeah, it's certainly Brexit has created a major problem in relation to the ongoing Good Friday Agreement in Northern Ireland. And I mean, I'm not sure. The main parties have tried to play down and not bring in stability into the situation, but some of the politicians in Northern Ireland have used it for their own political promotions, and that's unfortunate. And there are problems with the protocol, is what it's called, that puts, in theory, puts a border down the Irish Sea. And I mean, that's a problem for one side, the Union side. But hopefully the structure of the Good Friday Peace Agreement will hold. And I think it will. It's kind of the issue, or one of the problems would have been what's called the marching season in July, and it seemed to have come off quite peacefully in Northern Ireland, but that doesn't mean that it will flare up again. I think we have reasonably good politicians working on it, and bureaucrats. So I think with the promotion, or the Americans are getting quite involved as well by putting pressure on the British. So I think cool heads will prevail. So hopefully we can report back in the next month or two that some agreement has been reached. It's going to be a fudge, like a lot of peace negotiations, because there will have to be a border either on the island of Ireland, which the Irish government will not accept, or there will have to be a border in the Irish Sea, which the Unionists won't accept. So there has to be a fudge or a major compromise. So that's my report, really. So thanks.
I mean, I have a third solution, which of course is a second referendum on Brexit for the whole UK. And I think this time around we'd vote to stay in Europe, in which case there doesn't need to be a border. You know, in my view, Brexit was a ridiculous fantasy dreamed up by plutocrats in Britain, the very elite moneyed classes that wanted to ship their capital offshore. And they're all in the hock with the military industrial establishment. And finally, the British people have woken up and seen through the whole game. So I campaign for the third solution to the Irish problem, which is Britain rejoins the EU. And I'm part of an ongoing network of campaigners and activists. I'm not going to In fact, I'm fasting every Sunday till that happens. That's my Gandhian solution to that. Morag, Scottish independence, Intellectuals for Free Scotland. Can you give us a report on the Scottish independence movement? How far are you along the trail, and why hasn't Nicola Sturgeon called the referendum yet?
Unfortunately, there's greater issues out there. It's like at the moment, it's like do we first needs to see what's happening with Ireland, for example, because if Scotland goes independent, one of the things that they'd look at is importing and exporting through the south of Ireland, as well as putting it back through Aberdeen, and using that as a route. That cannot happen. That cannot be negotiated if talks and certain things don't go through. What happens to the fishing industries at the moment, which are in absolute chaos, and Westminster's trying to push through the borders again. They've already moved Scottish border waters twice, and they'll try to do it for a third time. They've given away other powers as part of the Brexit negotiation that belong to Scotland. And you know, what happens to us is are we allowed that back? Are we not allowed that back? So all these questions need to be answered. And plus, it's a gag order was laid on her as well through the High Courts, and that was Westminster that forced that on her. It's just last year, just for Christmas. She was taken to court by Westminster, and a gag order was issued. So legally, she is not allowed to openly discuss certain things because of this gag order, as well as several other issues. So it has to be dealt through the courts first. And plus, it's they put in a clause in the first referendum that to have another one, it needs to be done with Westminster approval. The UN has already said that they won't accept Scottish independence if we do it forcefully. Like, for example, if we just go, look, we don't care what you say, Scotland's going to have a referendum whether you agree with it or not. It's we have our agreements, we have our ancient laws. It's we have the Declaration of Arbroath. It's but still in law, it just takes 100 Scottish nobles to say, yep, we want independence, and that's all it'll take. But because they put that in writing and because it was put into law, the UN won't accept us, even as an independent country, without their stamp of approval. So we're fighting that through court at the moment, that it doesn't need their permission for us to have a second referendum. But that court case has to be won first. So by all means, it's not over. And by all means, it's there's people still fighting in the background. There's still marches, there's still political things going on. There's still court battles going on. But all that has to be done first before a much wider vote can be done.
Thomas, can I just come back in for a minute?
Yeah, Sean, go for it.
Just in relation to the other issues that we were discussing, certainly Afghanistan, the Middle East. In Ireland, in the peace process, we were very lucky because the two major outside powers that were influencing the conflict, the European Union and the United States, both of those interests coincided to get peace in Ireland. So in relation to other issues like in the Middle East, the outside powers don't particularly want peace. They're there for other reasons. So we were lucky in the Irish peace process. And if we can put it forward as an example, but that as it turned out, the people interfering from the outside were interfering for the better purposes. And that hasn't happened in Afghanistan or the Middle East in a lot of the conflicts, unfortunately. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, Sean has written quite a few books about peace and has been active with, academic groups in Ireland working for peace. So we can learn a lot by studying the Irish history.
Yeah. And just very quickly, Thomas, just lastly, one of the major things of why Westminster pushed through Brexit was because the UN in fact, all of Europe went into disbanding nuclear weapons and nuclear, where that is worth a lot of money. It's literally billions a year, and they did not want to give it up. So that's what it literally all boiled down to. It's they dressed it up in a pretty little ribbon as something else, but it's that's really what it boiled down to. They did not want to get rid of Faz Lane. But Nicola Sturgeon has already said that if we win court battles and we can go ahead, which Scotland is, we're confident that will happen. When, we don't know, but it will happen. That the first thing that's being done is like, as soon as it's safely to do so, is the disbanding of those nuclear weapons. It's like, we're going to get rid of them. And
Yep.
Westminster is not happy about that.
Well, thank you for raising that. Just to say, on the Zoom call I was on last night with Scottish independence activists, there's a group called Now Scotland, which I actually belong to, and we were discussing this very issue. On September the 26th, there's going to be a peace demonstration outside Faslane, and a lot of Scottish independence activists will be there because the Scots, you know, are not idiots. They link, as Morag just did, their cause for independence with anti-nuclear activism. They want independence because they don't want to be under the Westminster nuclear umbrella anymore. Thank you very much. And when I lived at the castle in Scotland, which is how I met Morag and many other young Scots activists, I organized conferences on the future of Britain's nuclear weapons. You know, I come from a family that was involved with CND for many years. And, you know, I think that Scottish independence is therefore a moral duty for everyone, not just people who live and vote in Scotland, but it's a moral issue for the world. And that's why I've set up this, with Morag as secretary, this Intellectuals for Free Scotland, which is like the branch of the World Intellectual Forum in Scotland. So if you know any Scottish intellectuals, put them in touch. And the demonstration outside Faslane is on climate change and nuclear weapons removal. There is a link because the greatest single user of energy on the planet is the military, with all their exercises, production of arms, the whole nuclear weapons cycle. These guys are what are ruining our environment. And of course, the worst catastrophic environmental disaster would be a nuclear world war, you know. So they are the same issue. So thank you for raising that and for Scots and Irish courage in the face of ignorance. BM Jane says we're suffering from an ignorance trap. He had to go off, but that's his summary of where we're at. So the World Intellectual Forum are part of the resistance to that. Okay, so now, without further ado, we come to the Delphic Games proper. And we, you know, we've heard from some of the colleagues about this. To start with, I'd like to invite Rosalba Natero from Italy, who's very much committed to the arts as a form for peace and to the Delphic Games movement, to share your talk you prepared for us. We're going to be discussing the arts, and then I'll introduce others. Rosalba.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas. I'm honored to participate in this important forum. My thought is about the role of music, art, and poetry in the peace process. Sorry if I read, but I'm not very comfortable with the English. The late Giancarlo Barbadoro, speaking of artists, said, "We are like adventurers, free thinkers who walk on the bones of time to bring civilization to this planet." So many revolutions began with art. The peace process outlined by the Delphic Games is also a real revolution that goes in the direction of peace. That is why we intend to support this initiative as a worldwide vehicle to raise the profile of the arts and culture. The World Intellectual Forum Europe is playing an active role to support the Delphic Games. And as Italy is the home of the Renaissance and the arts, we want to give our support because it goes in the direction of eco-spirituality. The artists represent a sort of antibodies within the majority society, which rebel against the status quo and the logic based on unbridled productivity. Music, art, poetry are an eternal language that artists have always used to communicate a message. If artists are individuals with a sensitivity linked to nature, their message can be conveyed toward peace. The pandemic has divided us, and without going into the merits of the strategies that states have used to solve the problem, a climate of fear has been created, where harmony and freedom have become secondary concepts, and not only the problem not being resolved, but we do not see the end of it. Perhaps this is the moment to use art to spread a liberating message of peace and harmony. Today, we can see how humanity is culturally divided between majority society and natural society. The latter is made up of those minority cultures that have maintained a relationship with Mother Earth and who live in experience that we define as eco-spirituality, respecting the individual, nature, and all living beings. The majority society is based instead on anthropocentrism, and it is expressed with pyramidal social structures in which there is no respect for the personal needs of the individual, nor for the nature, and heaven less for its non-human inhabitants. But artists have a great responsibility, that of having the opportunity to spread messages to a wide audience. This possibility can be used for an act of justice, a contribution to an uprising of conscience toward a peace process. Art has always been used to spread liberating messages, spiritual messages. We can mention the school of Pythagoras, where music had a prominent place in the direction of the inner silence. We can mention the Chemovad, the dynamic meditation of druidic shamanism. We can mention Australian Aboriginal art, an expression of spiritual messages. With the intention of using music, art, poetry, I would like to point out an initiative of my organization. It is the New Ecospiritual Renaissance, a cultural and opinion movement that is growing and of which they are part as artists, philosophers, intellectuals. The New Ecospiritual Renaissance has many affinities with the Delphic Games, and this is the reason why we intend to support them. Ecospirituality is a natural philosophy that leads to re-evaluate the relationship of individual with nature, where all living creatures assume a value and dignity equivalent to that of man. The individual is not seen as the ruler of the world he inhabits, but it is associated with all manifestations of life in a common planetary experience that is part of an ecosystem that orbits in space. This is what we hope, that art, poetry, music prevail over conflicts and can be an inspiration for a world of peace. I wish to conclude with a short poem by Giancarlo Barbadoro. Sacred Land. The future dawns. The ancient gods have gone to leave us a new time. A new earth arises from the night. A new harvest grows toward the sun. Our memories become our present. In the ancient signs, we read the path of our freedom. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your wise words, Rosalba. Thank you for joining us. I'd love to invite Esther De Angelis from Bristol, where I first studied philosophy at the university. Because Esther's an artist. You and your husband, David, have done lots of work with the arts. Tell us how you see the role of the arts and culture and music in bringing peace, and what you're for it.
I'll do my best, Thomas. Well, I can only really refer to myself because it's been interesting. I feel that there's been a lot of isolation in lockdowns here in Bristol and across the UK. So one of the things that I've chosen to do, for instance, is initiate a creative tree of hope for the spring equinox on the Downs near us, where I have decorated and continue to decorate hundreds of god eyes, which are yarn weavings from the Huichol peoples. They've been making those for 500 years to really embody spirit and to protection, with the view to encourage people to be creative. And I've had a lot of feedback that it brings light and hope and joy to people who walk there. The other project that I've been busy creating is doing my free smiles, which is a transition from free hugging. And in fact, the BBC, I was with the BBC yesterday filming for a thing that they're going to put out in 10 days or whatever with my free smile sign. And I feel it is what I personally feel, that as an artist, it is my duty to show up and be courageous and break the narrative. And there is a huge cultural narrative of fear. And so as an individual, I can present myself on the street with a placard and say to students, it's an expression to everyone, old and young. We can all say something, even if we feel we can't connect through the internet, that we don't have followers, we're not got this amount of people on our Twitter or our Instagram, we can have an effect, and actually quite a big effect. So I suppose I'm a personal creative protester, and the way that I dress, of course, I'm a complete color evangelista, and it is totally contrary to our dialogue of convention and this is the latest fashion. It's like and I think this is the role of artists in general, is that we have to express, we have to wake people up and say, look, wake up out of fear, out of, as I say, false evidence appearing real. Come on, wake up. Remember, it's like we are forgetting. We've been brainwashed to forget. It's a remembering, and one of the lots of ways to do it, but being in the body is a fantastic way to remember much more of who we are when I know we're in the World Intellectual Forum, but it is very much about bringing head and heart together. And when I was speaking yesterday, I was very much talking about the heart. I'm here to connect. I'm here to bring people together. And that is the force of the arts. We are here. We are, as artists and creatives, we are designed to be bridges in culture. We are designed to offer different things up to the world.
Thank you. Yes, so true. I don't know if people know, but the word art etymologically is connected to an old Indo-European root, ar, which means join. And it's the same root as the word arm, ratio, reason, and so on. Esther has been involved with her husband in creating some amazing tarot cards, which she has a website for. Can you hold one up to the camera?
Yeah, I'll go and get a deck. Sorry, I wasn't expecting to be on.
The tarot is absolutely mind-blowingly artistic in the best sense of the word. And this is a tool for consciousness transformation.
I should let Davide, but anyway, I'll just offer, these are things that I make for the yarn.
They're amazing, yeah.
And then
down.
This is Davide's deck. Let's see.
Yeah.
Aha, we start with a very heavy card.
What's this card?
So this is the Seven of Swords. Let's see if I can find, oh dear, I'm all on swords, and which is where we are.
Yeah.
Here we are. Davide was saying he kept drawing the 8 of Swords yesterday, which is about being constricted, this revelation and regeneration through, am I doing this right? Can you see that?
Yeah.
She's bound in a coffin with swords, like the magician's assistant, being so constricted, but through the constriction, which is absolutely what we are experiencing in culture, and especially with coronavirus and the pandemic and the introduction of AI and all these different confluence of energies that we're being swathed in. It feels incredibly restrictive, but out of that restriction and bounded place can come revelation and revolution.
Okay. Yeah, and next time I hope Davide will come on to the...
Yes, absolutely.
We want to hear about his time with David Bowie. I believe he spent some time studying.
He did. There's the head and the heart.
Yeah.
We're talking about head.
Bowie was a great musician. If he was alive with us now, he'd sure be making up some new tunes.
And that was something I noticed in town yesterday, was just having a live musician on the streets. And part of the reason I've done the Creative Tree of Hope, we go over with our musical instruments and we play. So it's about creating these places like PowerPoints that attract creativity and energy and a co-creation.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And I hope you'll be involved with the Delphic Games as they evolve.
Right. Well, I hadn't known about them, so I'm new. You'll have to.
We'll initiate
me.
Right. Sabi, can I turn to you to tell us a bit more about the Delphic Games? How can people get involved? If artists like Esther want to play, what do they do? Where do they go?
Thomas, I'm overwhelmed today. I really didn't expect that power. I'm really overwhelmed. I'm right now trying to understand what happened to me, because everything has been said here. All the elements are here, and we are connected. And that's the main idea of peace. Basically, when we say we want to be multilingual, we want to be multicultural, we want to be interdisciplinary thinking. And this is what Christian also said. The evil powers want to disconnect, to divide, to separate. And we want to connect. We want to reconnect. Maybe we lost ourselves somewhere, but you can believe whatever system you want to believe. But if you believe in Adam and Eve, we are relatives right now. And this makes me so emotional, actually, really. Yeah, I'm really,
keep with the emotions.
it's wonderful. And the interesting thing is
gathering. Can I ask Christian to maybe tell us a bit more? The Delphic Games, why did you recreate them? What's the point? Why should people bother? How do you see their role in all this?
It's too blunt a question, dear Thomas, because you cannot describe in a nutshell what's all about the Delphic Games, what you're requesting. Because Sabi's, he described it. It is the feeling of responsibility. We have a power. We have to use the power. We shouldn't discourage out of the political, let's say, sometimes ignorance, the power plays, and to make arts and culture a matter, arts and culture had to learn one lesson. Because when you ask people about arts and culture, everyone understands something different. For example, when I saw Esther's nice handcraft made, it reminds me of the dream weaver. All of us, or most of us, know, and this is an art weaver, yeah? So each of us has a different understanding. And the challenge 30 years ago was to us how we organize arts and culture in a way to enable people which are not so close to the arts can gather and feel at home. Because you have to open the hearts, and if you start hard thinking, the people say at the beginning here in Berlin, for example, oh, Delphi, oh, you are a sect. Because this was their knowledge, they thought it's a religious group. They have not heard, and our education system has so been diluted by nonsense, by money-making activities, to streamline us being a valuable part of society. Value means producing, buying, not asking questions, looking for the button to push. And this has to have an end. And to unite people, as Sabi rightly said at the beginning, that we are here together, it needs a concept, and we copied a concept which already existed several thousand years ago, exactly 2,600 years on the spot, the Pythian or Delphic Games, or nowadays, so to speak, the Olympic Games of modern times, and since their 100th anniversary, the Delphic Games of modern times, which was founded by representatives of 20 nations in Berlin to say body needs its equivalent in mind and spirit. This was the beginning. But then the challenge was how to organize it. And we realized there were also recipes in the past. The guilds of artists in past centuries, they helped us because they were not so much artists, they were handicrafts, skill crafts, worker, so to speak. And out of them, they developed artists. They don't feel so much as an artist. They did their profession, let's say, develop their skills and finally become adored and embraced by the others. And with this so-called, they became the forerunners of that, what we call the intangible cultural heritage, or the tangible one. And we said we have to learn from them, and so we started the so-called differences of the arts, dividing them or separating them in categories. And we came up with 6 categories. The first category, musical arts and sounds, which refers to the singing, to the instruments, to the sound, either solo or group. The second was the performing arts, theater, dance, puppet theater, and all kinds of performing arts. The third was the language arts, poetry, literature, was moderation, storytelling. Yes, the speaker as such, they can tire you to death, or they can, let's say, force you to move almost and hug them. Then the fourth was the visual arts. Visual arts, sculpture, painter, photographer, short film, fashion, the arts, not just the yesterday, but the tomorrow as well. The fifth was, when we were founded, the scientists, the intellectuals, the so-called most profiled authorities said, this doesn't exist. We spoke from social arts, ritual and communication, the art of communication, how you speak with people, how you learn, how you, and didactic, and rhetoric. They are visual arts and communication, and not visual, social arts and communication. And the fourth, when we were founded 27 years ago, they said this doesn't exist. Ecological arts and architecture, they accept it, but ecological art does not. Nowadays, no one laughs anymore because it becomes an item, and this is united in the Delphic symbol. We have, as you might see here, this is the symbol of the Delphic games. One art unites and is interlinked with the other, and one art cannot live without the other. And with this structure, we went out and tried to convince countries, city, hey, become a host of the first, second, third Delphic Games. And when we had the last Congress in St. Petersburg, 1996, or the first Delphic World Congress, Georgia, which was among us, said, we want to host the first youth Delphic Games. Poor Georgia, some said. However, they were the host. In 1997, the first Delphic Games took place in Georgia. The patron was Eduard Shevardnadze. It was a celebration of the whole country. They invested $200,000. Mind-boggling at that time for the people. But the government said, that's worthwhile to be done. And we saw the refugees, and in Tbilisi, they had a huge hotel where we were always stacked into, and they said, oh, it's rather tiny, but the refugees from where the battle took place in the south, out of one of the battlefields in Georgia where the Russian tried to occupy. It was not Ossetia. It was next to the water side. I just don't remember now. However, they came and they were, and the youngsters, and they asked me, do you accept injured or handicapped? Do you have extra games for handicaps? I said, what handicap? If you draw with your mouth, if you draw with your hands, if you draw with your feet, it doesn't matter. If you do an artwork, you do it and show it. We saw artists singing like angels, having no arms, because the blast of a grenade took them away. They played with a grenade and it was gone. And we saw this is the real power of humanity. And it was something which touched us. We were received by normal families, invited to wine and to join and to be together. It shows the real nature of human beings. And so I believe, and it happened it had been in Jeju, in Korea, in South Africa. We had 8 worldwide Delphic Games in 8 countries. And I can tell you, we grow, we had smaller games and we have larger ones. The largest was in Jeju, the peace island between Japan and Korea. And here we had 56 nations, 1,400 artists, jurors from around the world coming with us and saying, my God, time has come. And this is what we offer and ask you. Become an active member of ours. Help us to wake up and shake up those who want to focus or their city, their country on a world map and want to show this is us as well. It's not just misery, it's us in its brightness. And if you have access to those decision makers, help them to make the right decision And the success encouraged us to do something very unusual in 2018, when you remember here in Europe, we had the European Cultural Heritage Year, 2018. And we tried our government to show a project. It was the first continental Delphiad. And they said, oh, nice. And they invited us friendly into a revolving door. And you know the technique of a revolving doors, you're invited and you find yourself at the street. And we said, this is not enough. We don't allow to be discouraged. And so we wrote to the president of the European Parliament and said, you initiated this European Cultural Heritage Year, together with the Commission. You did this. Here we have a proposal. And we expected to be responded or hear something in 1 or 2 or 3 months. After 3 days, the telephone rang. The office of the president was there. And we heard words which encouraged us. It is the most delighting project we heard about. No country of the 27 EU nations even came close to that proposal of the European Delphiad. And the speciality in our presentation was, we don't spoke from 27 countries of the EU. We don't spoke from the 47 of the Council of Europe. We spoke about the 51 countries of the cultural area of Europe and said, we are all relatives. The last 200, 300 years, we became one, if we like it or not. So let's live together and share what most of us are not aware anymore or have forgotten. And this is the reason why the Delphi Games needs now the help of the thinkers and in particularly the actors in doing things. Thomas said so nice, we are just intellectuals. What means just? You are intellectuals and you sense, you, let's say, empower your inner strengths the first. And it's up to us to go away from a project, moving towards an initiative which remains for our children and grandchildren, because the project has, to my understanding, a beginning and an end, but that's not enough. We have to continue and serve children, grandchildren, future generations. And Europe has so much egg on its face, on so much butter on his head with the role European powers played the last 200 years worldwide. It's time that we bring a peace initiative. Hey, please accept our apology. We want to help to revive and strengthen your cultural heritage, become a part of us, and let's share how to bring this heritage into modernity. How not changing it, but building on it. So never leaving the roots. And this is something I would like to invite you. And Thomas, we have documentations in English. Thomas has all the facts. And I want to very much thank you, Thomas, for joining us with your intelligence, your bright mind, and your courage, doing the unusual in an unusual way. And in particular, I would like to ask also, and want to thank Sabi Hatim's Chakiral is his complete name, because he is a brilliant voice actor, a brilliant organizer, a parallel organizer in 4 languages and speaker in German, Turkish, English, Arabic. And he said, Christian, we have to promote, and we will, because we offer something unique. No comparison to the bodies, just balancing body. As the ancient Greek once said, body and mind makes the total. Thank you for listening.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Christian. We are recording this so other people can hear your wise words. We have some questions. Susan has been patiently waiting, and then Shapur. Yeah.
Well, I don't think I can match that passion, actually. I'm not quite sure. I'm trying to work myself up right now. That was very, very, really very interesting. I've learned so much. And I just wanted to say that I agree with, you know, what was said about, well, the arts, because I'm primarily a dancer, but also a sculpturist and an artist. And I've always believed in somatic healing. And this is a very ancient concept, of course, that the Greeks, you know, they couldn't do anything without doing a quick play about it, right? Because we're emotional creatures, we're creatures of emotion. And in the beginning, there was sound and there was light. So we are hardwired to lovely pictures or emotional pictures. We're hardwired to our emotions being affected by art and, of course, by sound. So to what you said previously, it's perhaps not difficult to you know, almost everyone likes both of those things. Even the most uncultured person would like them and not realize that was culture. So it's not so difficult to induct people. That there are different ways of induction. I'm a forest bathing practitioner, and it's basically like mindfulness. And we induct people into different states of consciousness, and they have no idea. They have no idea because they're hardwired to it anyway. And I wanted to say that also, I was just reminded of that Margaret Atwood book about the children who were bred for organ donation, but their teachers were so upset about the fact that they'd all be harvested that they did art competitions because they felt that the fact the children were so creative proved that they had a soul. And they were clones, the children were clones, but they still had a soul because they were creative. And I just thought that was rather lovely. And thirdly, that I happen to know quite a lot about Neolithic practices that were somatic. They were involving the body. So I think this is really pre-hunter-gatherers a long time ago. And there's evidence from all over the world that all we know about that, of course, is the statues and the artwork that we have from the ancient world, but from Siberia to Delphi, in fact, and to, you know, Egypt and Rome, that human beings have been connected to the other realms, the more metaphysical realms, let's say, through the body, through the posture of the body, and music was part of this, and the rhythm of music. So I think the somatic route is very, very powerful through the senses and all these things. And of course, the intellect is important too, because without planning and knowledge, nothing will happen anyway. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Well, thank you so much, Susan. Yes, you're making me think yoga ought to be part of the Delphic Games in some way, as an art. And also, our bodies are our own art form, in a sense. But thank you. So it's not that the Delphic Games are against the body. No, we use the body artistically, and body art, painting, jewelry, you know, all that stuff. So fashion will be part of the Delphic Games, the beauty games, so to side of it. We have another question from our Afghan friends, Shapur and Asiya.
Yes, it was actually me wanting to say thank you for sharing, Christian, the amazing sort of projects and work that you're doing. We on our side sort of have been actually promoting the art and culture of Afghanistan for, you know, like a few decades now in the UK, and sort of have always been open for others to be involved. Last year, we have actually initiated the Afghan International Peace Conference and Festival with a sort of wider sort of concept of initiating a peace center in the name of Afghanistan and all the victims who have lost, all the victims of war and those who have lost their lives and those who are still hopeful. So the festival started last year with about 50 people, various different stakeholders, academicians, artists, musicians, and various other people. And this year on the 21st of September, again in recognition of World Peace Day, the second conference is going to be taking place. And so we would appreciate anyone who wants to be involved. Please, you're most welcome. This is actually also supporting the digital Afghan Library and Peace Center in the name of Afghanistan to promote peace, but then also to raise awareness about world peace and various different aspects around peace and connecting. So what you're doing, Christian, is more or less what we have been doing in a smaller format, but last year we initiated this project, and this year we have received more sort of submissions and sort of participation from both Afghan and international other sort of academicians, professors, and so on. So we have a wide range of activities. We have got about 10 different strands of activities to do with, you know, the promotion of art and culture, film screening, poetry, and various different aspects. I mean, the work is actually available online. You can actually have a look at the online exhibition and showcases that have been happening. But yeah, very much appreciate to sort of stay in touch with whoever is in.
May I just say thank you very much. The International Delphi Council is an international body, and I'm just serving this body, and it's not restricted for anyone. Everyone is welcome. So let's unite, because I know if we have hundreds or thousands of festivals every year, it doesn't bring strength and awareness worldwide. We need to unite our power. As sports taught us, if we are not uniting capacity, we will have no voice in the world, in politics, in peace, because even nowadays, if we see in Tokyo the struggle of Olympia, however, the media are reporting, and with the help of the media, also the Delphi Games can unite the efforts, and I know we will find solution that you don't lose identity of initiatives you have, but participating under the roof of Delphi, the roof of peace. So most welcome to all of you, to your ideas, to your, yes, we are just at the beginning. It's only 30 years. So many years and generations waiting for your input. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. I mean, the World Intellectual Forum in Europe is absolutely 100% behind the Delphi Games. And I see it as one of our great contributions from Europe to world history and culture. The Delphi Games ran for 1,000 years before they were forcibly shut by some psychopathic pseudo-Christian emperor. So, you know, we're going to revive these things for the next 1,000 years. So think long term.
Yes.
Ahead for your great grandchildren. What will they do? We have a poem from Birjan. Then I want to say a few words to close, because we've overrun our time limit, but I think it's been worthwhile, this discussion. So I'm not feeling too guilty. Birjan, you have a poem for us, I believe.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Actually, I was most excited. I will explain, when someone approached to me in 1995 for the Delphi Olympic Games in Turkey. And by then, the president of Turkey was Süleyman Demirel. And it turned out the way it was presented here. It was presented or reached to me as a British person who was a French dancer, and he had so many other credentials, and someone introduced me that he wants to reach the government level. So my question is to Christian and Thomas, to you as well, and also Sebastian, because the way it came out, and I had all the documents they provide me. When I look at, for instance, then even now, Kurdistan was not a country. It was listed as a country. And then it was appeared to me when I searched the documents in 1995, it was a kind of, there has a political agenda. I was so excited and I wanted to be part of it. And it was, if I didn't see, I questioned those, what I've seen in the documents. And suddenly I kind of faced some threat. And that also was determined if it wasn't like Kurdistan issue and hidden agenda, but I found, and I was gonna stay in Turkey and lead that the way it was presented to me. So the question is, hasn't it a political agenda behind it? And the second is, isn't it on the governmental level? How, for instance, now I have a Lightning organization, it's in 20th University, and if it's not working, its mechanism is designed, if it's not governmental based, and then how NGOs collaborate, what is the mechanism?
Well, we have naturally documented how to become a member, how to participate, how to host. All of this naturally is developed and ready for distributing. And Sabi and I, we are happy to supply you with the material if you are interested, because we need a lot of your spirituality, of your network support, because without being together and doing it, nothing will happen. And it's just on us to push. And the most important and wonderful thing is you don't have to talk too much to convince people. Arts and culture is the daily food for soul and mind. It's obvious.
Yeah.
Thomas, may I read a poem? May I read a poem to finish?
Oh, sure. Yes. Can I just answer that point? Although she's gone, she'll be able to listen. Then we'll do the poem. The question was, are we political or not? You know, and you could ask that of the World Intellectual Forum and the Delphic Games. I would say that in the sense that Nietzsche said that, no, this is called grosse Politik. This is great politics. We're not concerned with this or that political party or this or that government or whatever. We're concerned with the next 1,000 years, you know, the next eon, to use a Jungian term. We're trying to build a world of peace. So of course we have to engage with politicians, but we have to fundamentally educate them. I ran 36 meetings in the House of Lords when I lived in London. I think Shahpur and Asiya came, many of my friends in London. We used to go to the House of Lords and try and get some intelligent discussions going there. You know, that's grosse Politik. And so I'm merely a philosopher, not a politician. But what we're trying to do is what Plato was trying to do, which is build culture, Bildung in German.
Sorry, Thomas, we're not trying to do it, you do it. And there are many triers around. You do it, and that's important. Each of us does it, and not just try. Because if we try, we can fail. If we do it, we will never fail.
Thank you so much. Okay, Sabi, another point, and then we must get to Esther's poem. Yeah.
So I see it like this. We have arts, culture, and science. And in my opinion, these are three eternities. And you cannot try, or you cannot prevail to put eternity into something which is limited. And all the politics of the world are limited. So they are like glasses or pots, and we will not allow to let them put, or let anyone to put, eternities into limited forms. And I think therefore we can say that we are in that sense eternal, and nobody can limit us and put us into something.
Right, thank you. So that's another.
I'm sorry, I was frozen and I missed most of the response, and I don't know what part you have heard me, but I was disconnected and tried twice, and I'm now in again. So
okay, welcome back, Birjan. Welcome.
I couldn't hear the responses. That's what I'm
but you'll be able to listen to the recording, and we did comment on your points in detail. We're going to hear a poem from Esther now. So Esther, do read your poem.
So this is a poem called The Invitation by Oriah Mountain Dreamer, and it's such a beautiful poem. I thought I wanted to offer it to the group. It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for, and if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing. It doesn't interest me how old you are. I want to know if you will risk looking like a fool for love, for your dream, for the adventure of being alive. It doesn't interest me what planets are squaring your moon. I want to know if you've touched the center of your own sorrow, if you've been opened by life's betrayals, or have become shriveled and closed from fear of further pain. I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without moving to hide it or fade it or fix it. I want to know if you can be with joy, mine or your own, if you can dance with wildness and let the ecstasy fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes, without cautioning us to be careful, to be realistic, to remember the limitations of being human. It doesn't interest me if the story you are telling me is true. I want to know if you can disappoint another, to be true to yourself, if you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul, if you can be faithless and therefore trustworthy. I want to know if you can see beauty, even when it's not pretty every day, and if you can source your own life from its presence. I want to know if you can live with failure, yours and mine, and still stand on the edge of the lake and shout to the silver of the full moon, yes! It doesn't interest me to know where you live or how much money you have. I want to know if you can get up after the night of grief and despair, weary and bruised to the bone, and do what needs to be done to feed the children. It doesn't interest me who you know or how you came to be here. I want to know if you will stand in the center of the fire with me and not shrink back. It doesn't interest me where or what or with whom you've studied. I want to know what sustains you from the inside when all else falls away. I want to know if you can be alone with yourself and if you truly like the company you keep in the empty moments.
Thank you.
Such an amazing.
I love that poem. I've heard it before, but you read it so brilliantly. The idea of the Delphic Games is that we will have poets coming and competing, and everyone gets some kind of a prize. And I think, to me, a poet is also always an intellectual, a good one. So that's why there's this marriage between the World Intellectual Forum and the Delphic Games. Okay, we're coming to the end. I want to mention a couple more points on the agenda, and then we're going to finish with a poem from Birjan before we close. On the agenda is a very important topic, and somebody talked about politics. On our board for the World Intellectual Forum, we have 3 activists who are campaigning for a sort of global governance mechanism. We have Professor Glenn T. Martin, who runs the World Parliament and Constitution Association. He says the solution to the world's problems is to create a world parliament, a forum that can discuss and implement policy. We also have a Russian, Igor Kondrashin, and it's chaired by Nicholas Haggard, a British intellectual, who says that we can't wait for a world parliament. We have to go ahead and create a world aristocratic council that will just do what's needed. So he's created a sort of world parliament a world governance through aristocracy. And he had the temerity to appoint me to that. So I'm part of the World Aristocratic Council, just to know. And then we have our chairman, Dr. Swami Nathan, who has his own proposal from India for a world governance proposal. The trouble is these three groups don't talk to each other very often. You know, they met in India when we were launched. They occasionally meet. But you know, to get them all in the same room and discuss like a common approach is proving like trying to get pigeons to run a race in straight lines, you know. So I have another proposal, just as a philosopher, in case you're not knowing. I think we have a problem in democratic institutions because politicians have discovered that if they lie, they can do whatever they want. And we've got mendacity has now taken over the British Parliament. When I ran meetings in the House of Lords, it wouldn't occur to us we'd have prime ministers that would lie shamefacedly without resigning, you know. So I've introduced a bill called the Duty of Veracity Bill to Parliament, which is that politicians have to tell the truth. And if they're caught lying, they immediately lose office. They resign as an MP. And this should also be in Congress, in the European Parliament, in the devolved parliaments of Scotland and Wales, and in the French Parliament and so on. So that's one concrete project, I think, that could really help. I don't care what party they're in, as long as they tell the truth, then at least you know what you're dealing with. I also think that I'm not sure politicians can solve the problems of the world. They're beyond their capacity. I propose as an alternative for global governance, if we're going to have some kind of global governance, I prefer the term global spiritual governance. I think I've worked a lot with the faith communities of the planet. I think that if we can get the great religions of the planet, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, Sufism, the Druids, all the ancient religions, the indigenous religions, and the big ones, you know, like to sign a peace treaty. This is why I've written the first and only interfaith peace treaty. And this idea has been taken up, as an academic at the University of St. Andrews has written a smaller version. There are other attempts. I think if the religions of the world could come together and form some sort of global spiritual governance as an interfaith light keepers project. Now, this isn't about politics. All they would do is try and give some kind of moral governance. So spiritual and moral governance, like teach people that no, violence is wrong. What Sharpo described as shocking atrocities going on. No, that's wrong. If the great Muslim leaders of the world could say on a global spiritual council, that's wrong, brothers, that's not Islam. If, you know, Christians would say, no, child abuse is wrong, what happened in Canada, all these things. So I think there's a gap here. And global governance, yes, of course, we want a parliament and it'll come one day. But I don't think we're ready for it because we're not morally evolved enough as a species. We still have people that think lying is appropriate in politics. We have people that think atrocities are appropriate. So let's get some kind, and that to me is why, you know, the World Intellectual Forum can help bring together some sort of moral consensus on the way forward to peace. And also the Delphic Games can help by getting the great thinkers of the world to come and compete. You know, what are their theories for social reform? How can we get peace on the planet? That can be a part of the Delphic Games. And then the other point was that the other item in the agenda is about the question of regions for the World Intellectual Forum. You know, I'm the European coordinator. Nice to meet you all, but we need people to come forward in America, in Africa, in Asia, you know, please get involved from those different regions. And we have, I think, some, you know, people trying to work on that. Because this is not just a European thing, it's a worldwide thing, right? Just as the Delphic Games is. And my last point, the last item on the agenda, it's a big one, but In a sense, we're the poor man's equivalent to the World Economic Forum. But they have all the money, cloud, and the high-tech gizmos. And, you know, they meet in Davos with all the movers and shakers. They've just set up a thing called Global University Leaders Forum. So the World Economic Forum are trying to like spread their tentacles everywhere. Some people don't like them. They say that they're very technocratic. Bill Gates and co are their types of members. Klaus Schwab seems to have a sort of very technocratic view of how to save the world. And some people are resisting this. They want to be human, not sort of microchips. We don't want a robotic, what they call the fourth industrial revolution. No, we want a humane evolution. We want a peace revolution, if anything. So I just, you know, that's a huge topic. And should we, the World Intellectual Forum, have a sort of university network of, like, if they're going to have a World Economic Forum, Global University Leaders Forum, well, we should do the same. And I'm thinking about how we can do that. Perhaps with my hat on for the Delphic Games as education coordinator, you know, this can be a joint thing. Because to me, universities should be they should be part of the World Intellectual Forum. You know, that's where, I mean, I went to Bristol University, and to be honest, I was a bit disappointed at the level of teaching going on in universities. And I was I was part of a scientific and medical network meeting yesterday with a man called Nicholas Maxwell from University College, who's campaigned to get universities to stop thinking about knowledge and to start thinking about wisdom. I, like Nicholas Maxwell, think universities don't think enough about joined up wisdom. They deal with knowledge as a business. You know, you train in some little bit of knowledge, you become an expert. You never see the bigger picture. So we're thinking that the Delphic Games might give a sort of certificate of worthiness to universities, but only if they keep all their faculties and departments open. If they have art departments, music, philosophy, metaphysics, psychology, science, you know, that's what a university ought to be. Joined up thinking places where the kind of discussions we've had on this chat would be normal. Nicholas was lamenting yesterday on this call, he's been trying to get this going in University College for 30 years. There is nowhere that the academics at University College all come together and have a chat about interdisciplinarity. They all do their own little thing and their own little branches of knowledge. So, you know, ours is the mission of joined upness is the path to peace. And as I said, AR, the arts, comes from the root to join. That's how we're going to get peace on this planet, by joining together the different cultures, religions, and social classes. You know, everyone's welcome. The arts flourish at all levels, from rap to opera, and the Delphic Games and the World Intellectual Forum are open to all. So look, with those few closing remarks, let me just ask Birjan, you have a final poem. Oh, we have another poem also from Susan, I think. Let's Birjan go first, and then Susan can finish hers.
Thank you so much, Thomas. As first, actually, if I may, I've been really worrying too much, and I think everyone is in this forum. We need a global environment governance too. I mean, working towards and claiming and shaping, because you know, for the profit, all the forests, 10 million trees are cut off for 3 months, and then you know, all the natural disasters follow by. And this is very much the case most part of the world. So maybe you may consider to add on for the future reference. And before I start my poem, this is also kind of remind me Esther, so when she mentions please wake up, that's also my poem title is Please Wake Up. And it's a little bit of background, because I had attended 3 days for the PrEP, non-proliferation nuclear weapons territory in 2002 at the United Nations. And it was like 3 days full, morning to evening, late hours. And I didn't know what to do with all that information. And I wanted to learn and be becoming more knowledgeable, but I didn't have that kind of training to comprehend and to write a report or some comments, etc. And now after 3 days and thinking, and I came up this poem in 2002 April. Please wake up. Our planet is in danger. We are all in danger. Please wake up for a nuclear danger greater than ever, which is total insanity. If you do not, before you are able to say, I live not only part of our planet, but as a whole, we may vanish within 2 minutes that will cause death. At least for 10,000 years, this future faces us today. To have it today and tomorrow for ourselves, our children and grandchildren, we must protect our unique planet as a whole from this mental illness, this threat, this blind and self-destructive force without any borders. In order to save our own planet, make it a better place as one house for all, the only way out of this crazy blind addiction is to unite us all against the threat of nuclear war. Activate all your power now to stop production and usage of nuclear weapons, whether to protect our planet, making it a paradise or a hell to eternity, completely up to you. Please wake up. Please wake up for uniting us all against immensely destructive nuclear threat. If you do not, and if the button has once been pushed, whether in purpose or by an accident, there is no way to go back. For this reason, you must wake up. We must all wake up and must unite. Thank you.
Thank you, Birjan. That's a very moving poem, and I understand why you wrote it after that conference. I've also written poetry after attending the UN Social Summit, for instance, in Copenhagen in the 90s. You know, sometimes it has to come out in poetry. Right, so Susan, let's hear your poem, and then we're going to end. I want to thank everybody on this conference. It's been very remarkable. If anyone wants to introduce themselves at the last minute, who've just joined us, feel free. But let Susan read her poem first.
Right, this is very brief. It's one of my earlier poems, but I'm really fond of it. So, life is complete. Today I was at peace, life seemed complete. Mountains shimmering on far horizon, picture perfect, merged with sky blue. Is there no boundary of earth and spirit? Could it be true that we also merge with this iridescent haze? In that moment, our atoms are dancing with rhythm. This isn't part of some craze. With their partners in sea, sky, and rock to create a symphony of joy that some try to mock, but underneath have only envy, because for us, life is complete. This afternoon, I'll sit and think of tea and toast and dinner plans, less moments into which I'll sink down memory banks of sea and sand, unique, fashioned by a single hand, which molds with joy and passion to provide perfection into which we may share to feel abundance and breathe the air of life, which is complete. Tomorrow, when I'm flicking out with ego rule and mind control, just when I want to scream and shout, I'll think back to austere peaks and see so cool and know that there's another world where life is complete. That's it.
Thank you. That's very sweet. Okay, so thank you to everyone. Samantha, you've joined us from America. Do you want to just introduce us briefly and tell us anything you want that you've been reflecting on during this?
Hello, good morning, everybody, or good morning for me. So I'm located right now in Portland, Oregon. I'm originally from New Jersey, and I have just sort of been listening to what everyone's been saying, and like Thomas just said, reflecting. I tend to observe first before I generally make any comments. But I completely, absolutely resonate with the importance of unification and the awareness around how disconnected and separate our species is right now. And that goes well beyond the pandemic that we've been experiencing. It's a sort of its own pandemic that has been ongoing for really, in my opinion, since and I've been reflecting on this a little bit lately, human evolution. I really believe, and Thomas, I've had this conversation with you before about what differentiates humans from any other species or organisms on the planet. And since I've been reflecting on that more, what has become clear to me is, in my opinion, when Homo sapiens, or maybe even our hominid ancestors, became self-reflective. So when we started seeing other species in a way that is separate from our own. So to know when I hurt, I look at another species and can see and understand that they hurt as well. And so when our species developed this capacity, that's when we started really developing our empathy and our compassion. And so we began united, but because our cultures and our communities were so separate because we couldn't communicate really at the time, we were all we had, and we're social beings. And so as that grew and as we became more connected, we really started to see differences, and our differences were not really assimilated in a collaborative, cooperative way. They were really assimilated more out of fear. And the fear is what led to the need to control and eventual violence, and, you know, just sort of catapulting us into the today that we see. And so I love your idea about creating sort of a unified government, although I kind of don't like the word government, and this just sort of gets back to language and creating the right language around entities like this. But it is also something that I've been thinking about, and having more morals and ethics brought back to humanity, because that is so lacking right now. And we're all part of the same, no matter what culture we come from, no matter what our ideas and beliefs are. I always feel like there is that one thing that always connects us, that we always know inside when we go deep within ourselves and we know who we are. We know we come from nature. We know we come from the beauty and the creativity and the imagination that's all around us. And that is spectacular and miraculous. And so that really does weave us all together. And we tend to know very strongly when something is very right versus very wrong. And whether we follow that, whether we follow what we feel is right, is really our free will. And a lot of times I think what we've been doing is just sort of following the masses out of fear. And so the less we can organize ourselves around fear, and the more we can organize ourselves around peace and love and harmony, the better we will be. And so I appreciate all of you, and I've enjoyed the poems. They're great. And yeah, so I look forward to being here more.
Right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Samantha. Samantha also runs the Institute of Noetic Sciences in her town, Portland, which is doing important work on alternative paradigms of consciousness and rethinking what science is for and so on. So she's a pioneer in that. intellectual work, and maybe on another occasion forum we can hear more about that. Right, so I think time has come to say thank you to everyone. It's been a wonderful meeting, actually. And just to say that some of you know this, but one of my heroes was a man called Peter Abelard, who founded the University of Paris, which is a forum for intellectuals, right? And he was also a famous lover. He fell in love with Eloise. It's a great love story. But he used the word intellect as a verb form. There is such a thing as intellecting. It's a verb, an active verb. It's not, we're not just the World Intellectual Forum, we're the World Intellecting Forum, which means we think very deeply and we have to somehow access that transcendental intellect, which has a noetic source. It's beyond any one of us. It will go on living when we're all gone. And we just had a meeting of the Mary Magdalene Studies Association where we heard the poem Thunder Perfect Mind read out, which is from that transcendental intellect source, which is a divine place. And when Christians or Gnostics talk about Christ as the Logos, they were talking about Christ embodied that cosmic intellect. But actually it's in all of us. And intellecting is when you wake it up. It's as simple as that. So, and I never knew Abelard had written this book called On Intellecting until I was at the Vatican Library, of which I have a card reader. And I found a secret room at the back with a copy of it. And I thought, that's pretty cool. So I always like to try and share the intellecting. This is a secret I've just shared there. It's not a noun. There's no such thing as an intellectual. You either know how to intellect or you don't. And if you don't, then please, we'll teach you. It's a bit like surfing, going down a chute at a waterway. And it's also a bit like being in love, which has its, going up and down. So it's about falling in love with the absolute, falling in love with the wholeness of things. And that's what my commentary, by the way, on the Quran is about, because every other sentence of the Quran is about the same thing. It's Muhammad saying, please, please fall in love with the all and just be nice and love each other and be peaceful. It's what all the sacred scriptures are saying. It's what is the common universal message. We have a question from our friend in New England, Lee Strasberger. I believe she wants to say something. Hello, Lee.
Hi, everybody. And I'm sorry I'm late. I had a medical appointment I had to go to this morning, but this is my first time at this forum, but it was wonderful, that little that I got. But Thomas asked me if I had a poem to read because it was I who read the Thunder Perfect Mind. And I wrote back no, but then I thought, oh, I have something very appropriate to today. And I just finished this wonderful book called The Villa of Delirium by Adrian Getz. And it's about the Reinach family, who were great intellectuals of the last century. Anyway, here's a little quote from Theodore Reinach, and it says this: "The Greeks discovered glory, they discovered beauty, and they brought to this discovery such jubilation, such an overabundance of life, that a sense of youthful contagion can still be felt even after the passage of 2,000 or 3,000 years." So that just seemed perfect.
Well, thank you, Lee. Yes, and we look forward to your participating in future meetings. So this World Intellectual Forum gathers on the 30th of each month. You're welcome to come.
Thank you.
Spread the word, invite your friends, and as I say, it's not a noun, it's a verb. If people are able to intellect together in love, then they're very welcome. Okay, so without further ado, let me just thank you all again. Blessings, shalom, salam, and pax and mir. And may we go forth and help spread a bit more hope, because there are some troubles in this world and we need to be the light that can counter them, all right? Okay.
Bye.